Live. It says, are we ready? I think we're live. Guys,
are we live?
We are live.
What's up, everybody?
Oh, my word. With the incredibly, I don't know if long waited. It hasn't really been that long since we planned this. 2 months ago. So much expected podcast with Mr. Russell Brunson himself. How are you doing, dude?
I'm doing amazing, man. Thanks for flying all the way to Boise just for this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Dude, this is probably the conversation I'm looking forward to most, certainly in my life thus far, when it comes to business and business and philosophy and everything like that. Well, it's funny. Your wife said, "Oh, thanks so much for coming out." I was like, "Yeah, it's certainly, yeah, because it's inconvenience to me to fly all the way out here." I will say, this is my first ever in-person interview like this.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Look at, we got the microphone set up.
I know.
We have. He's professional. I've never done this.
We have a soundboard down here. We got Russell's mic. Can you guys hear us all right? By the way, guys, for all of you listening on audio, we apologize because we're gonna ask for some comments in the Facebook feed here. We got everybody down here, by the way. You can see all the comments down here.
What's up, everyone?
All right, guys, if you are live, comment down below. Let us know where you're tuning in from. Let us know if you know Russell or if you know me or if you know both of us or what you're both looking forward to. And Russell, I'm going to be honest with you. We're just going to be like super chillax. We have a live audience back here. We got Dave. Dave's over there. We got Jake and Nick. Where'd Jake go?
Jake's working.
Oh, there we go. Jake's working late over there.
Jake, by the way, designed these amazing shirts for us.
Yeah, check this out.
This is my Reardon Still shirt. This is like Who is John Galt's shirt.
Isn't this great? Okay, but I feel like
you split back to back, so that's all read to you guys. It says, I started my life with a single absolute, that the world was mine to shape in the image of my highest values and never to be given to a lesser standard, no matter how long or hard the struggle. So do you guys like these shirts? These are custom made for tonight. And you guys may have a chance to get one of these, but not yet. Or yet. No, not yet.
Not yet.
When the ability, if you guys.
Oh man.
Anyway, it's gonna be fun. But these are custom. We literally made these today because we need some sweet shirts and for the show. So.
Oh, Caleb Wolf says he got your text. Did you send out a text to everybody? Dude, Russell's on top of it. I sent out a mini chat. Russell sent out a text. All right, guys. Let's lay some ground rules here. So the quick backstory behind this, and it's gonna be weird. Got to look in the camera here. Quick backstory behind this is I make a post on Facebook. Probably 3 months ago now or so? Yeah. 2-3 months ago, and I go, we need some epic people to interview for the podcast. Who do you know? Tag them all down below. And shout out Georgie. Georgie comments and goes, I coached Russell Brunson. You should totally interview me. And I was like, you gotta be pretty gutsy to like tag Russell in your comment and tell him you coached him. But then Russell comments back.
George is a Olympic wrestler. He was on the Bulgarian Olympic team. He wrestled Boise State with me. He's the man. So yeah.
So I comment back. I go, you coach Russell? And then Russell goes, well, yeah, he coached me. He's awesome. You should totally interview him. And so I said, yeah, Georgie, of course you can come on. We'll do an interview. But Russell, we got an open invitation to you if you want to come back on. And then you're like, sure, if we can talk about guns. Or no, you didn't say sure. You said, can we do it about Atlas Shrugged?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I get interviewed a lot about business stuff and like.
I want to pull the microphone just slightly.
I don't do a lot of interviews because I feel like I've said what I want to say. But I just finished literally probably the fattest book in the history of books called Atlas Shrugged. And I was geeking out on it and I want to talk about it. I didn't have a way or someone to geek out with other than some of my friends here. And I was like, you want to talk about Atlas Shrugged? I'm in. And then you started freaking out.
Well, the funny thing is I go something to the effect of like, you want to talk about the fall of capitalism because of a boycott, because of a brilliant person and why socialism sucks? Yes, absolutely. I would love to do that. To which you don't give me a yes or no answer. You reply back and go, ha ha, oh man, that'd be fun. I'm like, talk about an open loop, man. Come on. So anyway, I immediately messaged Russell and I'm like, you better not be joking because it's like, that would just be rude. He goes, no, I'm totally in. So about 2 months go by. You had a bunch of stuff. You had some fun stuff during that time.
A lot of stuff happening.
Tony Robbins.
Yeah. Tony, the man. And yeah, it's been chaos the last couple months, not gonna lie. And we got closer and closer to election. I'm like, this is an interesting conversation post-election, but I think it's more interesting before election. And so like, was it 3 days ago? You're like, I will fly to Boise.
Yeah.
Record this. What day do you have open? I'm like, only Wednesday night. And now
it was Friday afternoon. We were walking back and forth. You're like, dude, we gotta get this done before the election. I'm like, before the election. Oh my word. I said, all right, sounds good. Like what time do you have available? And that's what I was like, you know what? I was going to ask you creatively, but I'm just going to ask you, how about I fly out to you? And you're like, heck yeah. So guys, that's the backstory. That's how we got here. And so this is an open conversation about Atlas Shrugged and kind of everything that encapsulates. I think we'll talk about some religion, some politics, kind of some both sides of the aisle there and open it up. So anything else you want to add to that?
The only other thing I would add is because this book, by the way, if you haven't read it, is very polarizing. There are people on both sides of it. And I think both of us wanted to stress ahead of time that I do not believe in everything in this book. A lot of things in this book I do believe in. And it's interesting. One of the things I want to dive deeper in this conversation I'm excited for. And I told you on through Voxer, I was like, what's fascinating to me is not like, this is what we should believe. What was fascinating to me is as I was reading this book, and we'll get into the premise of the book for those who haven't read it, but the big thing is like producers and going out there and like creating stuff and doing things, which is like what entrepreneurs do, right? And it even gets to the part of like greed is good. Like you should be greedy because it's going to create all these amazing things, which then does the byproduct's really good. And part of me is like, yes. And then part of me as a believing Christian is like, I hear this message I believe in, and then I hear in my mind ringing Christ talking about faith, hope, charity, and love. And I feel like there are these two polar opposite things, which by the way, when we dive into politics a little bit, like there are two polar opposite sides, one that believes one believes the other. And I think that there's a happy medium. And that's what I want to dive deep into, is because I don't want anyone thinking like, oh, Russell and Josh just believe this or whatever. It's like, no, there's sides of this, and I empathize on both sides. I want to talk about both of them because they're fascinating. And I think I've toyed like writing a book about this concept, these two things. I think it'd just be fun to kind of first time verbally ever talk about. So I'm excited for it.
Yeah. And I would just echo that as well. I think one of the things that often happens with me with it's so funny. You who never, ever talks about politics, and me who doesn't know how to get on Facebook without arguing about politics, colliding here. But is that a lot of times I get like grouped into, oh, you like this reading, therefore you believe with like everything. Or like you read this book, or you like support this person, or whether it's, a political figure or a book or something like that. It's like by saying that you enjoy that or that you learned a lot from it, that like all of a sudden, like you suddenly believe everything in it. And that is not the case at all. And I've gotten a lot of criticism from people that are like, how could you possibly like Atlas Shrugged? And I'm like, well, this is the conversation that we're going to have. So real quick, before we dive in, I'd be curious. I want to do a poll real quick. How many of you guys have actually read the book? I'm curious to know. Yeah, hold it up here. There's two different versions of it, but if you've read the book, just comment below. Just the number 1 if you have read the book. The number 2 if you have not read the book. I think that'll just kind of give us a poll. We got like 200-300 people.
We'll count that as reading too.
Yeah.
So either way.
Yeah. If you like, not if you like know the premise of the book, but like actually have read the book and like have a deep understanding of it, or not deep understanding, but just like
understand the stories
and things like that. Because I think that'd be interesting. So
1 is read.
1 is read, 2 is not read. Oh, more ones than I thought it was going to.
Me too.
Russell's book is so underrated.
We're 50-50.
Oh yeah, I think we should take a poll at the end. What's better, Atlas Shrugged or .com Secrets? That's the real question we should be asking right now.
That would be good.
Okay, so we have a lot of people that have not read it, so we'll have to go into the premise of that. Okay, you ready to get started, dude?
Yeah,
we're just rock and roll with it. Okay, guys, we want to lay a couple ground rules, okay? Because Russell, I don't know what it's like to be Russell. Russell doesn't know what it's like to be me, but like I think we both have a mutual understanding that we could very easily be taken out of context here. I think the goal, and then I want you to kind of expound upon this, is like, we're not trying to take a side here. We're trying to have open discussion about it. Like this could very easily turn into something that's like, why you should vote for Trump? Why Biden sucks? Why Biden's great? Why Trump sucks? Or, something like that. Or like certain religion, or we're not trying to convince you of anything really. In fact, this is honestly more of a conversation for us. And we're like, we think it'd be cool to stream it out to a bunch of people because there's a reason for me to fly out here and do that. But the purpose of this is to have an open discussion about the book, the premise of the book, like an understanding of it. And then like, honestly, we're probably going to like be in our own little world over here. And we want you guys to like interact and comment and like engage and like post your questions, and we'll go back through it obviously. But like the purpose of this is not to try to convince anybody of anything. It's simply to, at least from my perspective, shed a new perspective and like give the perspective of somebody who, for those of you that don't know who Russell is, I mean, founder of ClickFunnels, a $1 billion company, SaaS company. You have 400 employees. So like from that perspective, and like from my perspective, like to open your eyes to like a new perspective of what we like, what we don't like, and like I said, more of a conversation like for us.
Yeah, I think it's good. And I think, I think a big thing that we will talk about is our goal is not to convince you of anything. In fact, I think I'm so convinced myself of both sides, right? Like I believe both these two, things that seem contradictory, but I think there's a middle ground, and I'm excited to explore it. So it'll be fun.
Cool. So I think we gotta
talk about the premise of the book.
Yeah, we gotta talk about the premise.
I might have a little mini statue behind me that might help. Can I grab it?
Yeah.
All right. Actually, I've got 2. This is another one right here.
I didn't even realize that.
That's Atlas holding. You want to hold that one too? Okay, so those who have not read Atlas Shrugged, I didn't know what the premise was at first, but this is the story of Atlas. So you guys know Atlas was cursed to be able to have to carry the entire weight of the universe, entire weight of the world upon his shoulders for forever, right? And so this is where the premise of the book, like all of us, right? People who are listening to this, my guess is you are a producer, right? Otherwise, you probably wouldn't be listening to me or to Josh. Like I attract, I teach, I coach, I help producers, entrepreneurs, people who are trying to change the world, right? I'm curious, how many of you guys have ever felt this pressure, right? Where you feel like you literally have the entire weight of the world upon your shoulders. And if you haven't, like it's time to become a producer. Like, that's first off. Second off, like I can empathize that. Like there's so many times you can ask Dave or any guys on my team. There's days I come in, I was like, I feel like I'm gonna crack. Like there is so much weight to carry this around. And I'm guessing most of you guys have felt that. It could be with your family, it could be in work, it could be business, like whatever it is, but you felt the weight of the world, right? So this is what Atlas had to hold, right? And so the premise of the book, Atlas Shrugged, is what would happen if the producers, the people that are carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders, what happens if they were to go on strike and they were to shrug their shoulders and be like, meh. In fact, should I read their tile you gave me?
Yeah.
Today? So Josh, as a gift today, gave me some amazing tiles. This is a quote from the book Atlas Shrugged, talking about this. It says, if you saw Atlas, the giant who holds the world on his shoulders, if you saw that he stood, blood running down his chest, his knees buckling, his arms trembling, but still trying to hold the world aloft with the last of his strength, and the greater of his efforts, the heavier the world bore down on his shoulders, what would you tell him to do? To shrug. So that's the things like what happens to society when us, the producers, when we no longer want to carry the weight of the world, we shrug and we walk away from it. And the book is a story about that. Like what happens when these producers start disappearing and they start leaving, they start going on strike. You see society, what happens when the producers disappear.
Yeah, I think so it's interesting because there is no one named Atlas Shrugged in the book, and there's nobody named Ayn Rand in the book. And so there's concepts that she's writing about outside of that. And it's this, how do you summarize a 1,200 page book? Like, it's like, all right. So basically in the book, there is a main character by the name of Dagny.
Yes.
Oh,
I say John Galt, but you're right. Yes, Dagny's main.
For the first 2/3 of the book, the main character is a woman by the name of Dagny, and basically she is one of the producers of society, and she is not the head boss of the railroad, but she's like basically the person that runs this railroad company. And it is written, 1950 is when this was produced. So in 1950, and it's basically like this forecast into the future of a government that is basically forcing super, super strict restrictions onto private businesses and like making them do things kind of like today in America, but like super, super government overreach in a lot of ways. And so Dagny is trying to keep the world afloat more or less by like getting the railroads done on time and like getting orders shipped. And I'm like super oversimplifying, but like around her, all the people that she worked with, like that owned all these other companies that like she would buy copper from, or she would buy steel from, or buy the railroad track from, or buy the coal from, like all of a sudden, like all these like head people, like imagine like people like Russell Brunson, like all his friends like just start disappearing. Like imagine like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and Russell Brunson, like all of them just like start disappearing, right? Like that's what's happening all around her. And she doesn't understand like what's happening to them because just one day it's up and it's gone. And so the premise of the first 2/3 of the book is like showing this story of this producer who is living in this world of like super government tyranny, like overreach, that's like super, super controlling. And she's watching all of her friends disappear and she doesn't know why. We say that's a pretty good explanation of it so far.
And every time they disappear, like leave behind a note or something that says, who is John Galt? So that's the themes out of the book is who is John Galt? Like who is this John Galt person that makes all the producers disappear?
And every time, and Dagny has no idea who John Galt is, right? And she doesn't even know actually for a while that John Galt's actually even a real person. And so once she does find out that John Galt is probably a real person, like John Galt becomes like her sworn enemy because she like doesn't know who he is or like what he's doing. All she knows and all she associates with is that John Galt is taking away all these producers of society. It's making her life harder because like imagine you being an entrepreneur and like all of your entrepreneur friends that like you buy stuff from and that you send all your people to, your referrals and like everything you buy all your supplies from. Like imagine they're like all just disappearing and you think it's because of this one guy who's like taking them all away and like you don't know what's happening to them. Like obviously they become your sworn enemy. And so if like for the first 2/3 of the book, like that's kind of this premise of like they're painting this really, really vivid story of these, what do they call them? The great thinkers of society. Yeah, the great minds of society, basically like disappearing. And Dagny and there's a guy by the name of Hank Reardon, I think.
Reardon Steele.
Reardon Steele, yeah. So one of the like Dagny and Hank Reardon are like kind of like the two major ones left right before the big plot twist happens, and you're like, oh, and then you get introduced to John Galt. I want to let you explain John Galt now.
Oh man. Okay, so that's the first 2/3 of the book. By the way, there's movies, don't watch them, it'll ruin the movies. Bad.
Read the book.
So 2/3 in the book, she starts trying to figure out this mystery of who's John Galt. She ends up finding him, and turns out that he has been going around and getting all these producers to go on strike. Convinces them that like, look, it's not worth fighting for anymore. All your incentives are gone. Like, let's leave. Let's go on strike. And they leave. And they, John Galt's trying to get her to leave, and she's like, I can't. I have to do everything in my power. And so the last third of the book is her, leaving John Galt's presence and going back and trying to figure out how to do this thing. And she's watching just the government regulations getting harder and harder and harder and harder to the point where everyone just has to disappear. And one of the things that John Galt and the people say, like, when the lights of New York go out, then we'll come back and we'll rebuild society from the ground up after the looters and the people are gone.
And that's basically how the book ends, is
the lights of New York go out. And
then
for such a long book, all of a sudden it just ends. You're like, oh, like,
yeah, you're like,
one more chapter. Come on, like, just end it.
And we're never gonna get it. So well, maybe
I'll write it.
Yeah. But so like that's like the storyline of the book. But where I think we really both want to focus here is kind of the premises, and like the overarching ideas that like the book presents, and capitalism versus socialism. And I think we'll talk religion and politics and kind of everything that's in that. But I kind of want to, if it's all right with you, like I kind of want to like turn the conversation more like towards us now, and just kind of like start geeking out just about that. So like guys, like we'll obviously go back, and by the way, we want like all your comments. If you're actually, comment below right now, like where are you watching? Are you watching it on YouTube? Are you watching it on Think Different Theory page? Or are you watching it on Russell's page? Like comment down below, because we're streaming to multiple different locations. So we have a bunch of different people tuning in for everything. So just comment down below, like leave your comments, leave your questions, like smash the like button, the love button, like share this out. And we're going to kind of turn this here. All right, Russell. What's up?
Hey, man.
All right, dude. I've been wanting to, and I hate this terminology, but like just pick somebody's brain like yours for the longest time. And like this book, oh my gosh. So give me like, what do you like about the book? Like what was your favorite thing?
Yeah. Well, let me tell the backstory. So I didn't realize this was 2008 when the markets all.
Ooh, hold on. Let me move the camera.
You can pull it back in. Okay.
Yeah. So that I can be a little bit. That way, I can kind of sit at the corner of this table. Hey, that's much better.
Cool.
All right, cool.
So 2008 is when the market crashed last time, right? And I didn't realize that year, over 500,000 copies were sold organically by people talking about it. Like talking about, this is everything she's prophesying is happening right now. And so back then, I remember all my entrepreneur friends like, you have to read this book. Like it was the word of mouth buzz to sell 500,000 copies of a book that's been, you know, the author died, whatever, 30 years earlier. Yeah. You know that there's not active marketing out there. Like, it's crazy. And everyone's talking about like what's happening in this book is happening in 2008. And it was just like this like prophecy now was being fulfilled. And so everyone in 2008 was telling me to read this book. I remember buying it, and I was like, this is a really, really big book. And I kept trying to get it. It took me a while to get into it, and I could never get into it. I read the first 200 or 300 pages like 4 or 5 times. And then finally this summer, I went on my very first trip where I didn't bring a laptop since my marriage. So my wife was very proud of me.
Dang.
And so as I was leaving the office, I grabbed this book and I picked it up, and I was like, I have no computer, but I got this one. And usually I bring like 20 books just because I never know what I'm going to read. I just brought one, and I was like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to be forced. I'm on a lake for a week and a half with my kids, and all I can do is read this book. So I brought it, got the audiobook as well. It's funny. I do the same way. I listen to audiobook and I read along. So I can listen to it way faster that way. And I started going through it, and it took me a little while. She does such a good job of character development at the very beginning. It took a while to get into it. And
yeah, for sure.
The story hits, and then you're just like,
it's like thing after thing after thing. It's so cool.
Oh yeah, and it got crazy. And so for me, it was interesting because I think if I would have listened to it 10 years ago or read it 10 years ago, I had never experienced any of the things they talk about in this book, right?
That now you don't have to worry about it. Yeah,
even better. I never experienced like government regulations and things like that, right? Or just those kind of things. And as ClickFunnels has grown from me and Todd to, to our first member, to our first 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 member, 400, I don't know how many employees, a lot, 400 plus employees. As it's grown, it's been crazy because you would think that like all we'd be focusing on here inside of ClickFunnels is like the next feature in the app, the next thing, and like there's a year where we had to spend an entire year just refactoring the software for GDPR compliance. We have regulations that come in on taxes and this, like just, it's constant. Where like most of the battles we fight at ClickFunnels right now is not about like, how do we make this thing better for the customer? It's like, how do we protect our customers from the government? Like it's crazy. And like, there's so many regulations and things. And so like, I had been feeling this pressure. Some of you guys may have seen my interview I did with Tony Robbins, or not interview, but Tony Robbins did an intervention with me last year in Fiji. Yeah,
that was fascinating, by the way.
I'm so glad we captured that. Like it was a really cool moment in my life. But if you listen in there, I talked about, he was like, well, what do you want to do? And I was like, I don't know, but I like the pressure. Like I love the game. So I love everything I'm doing. I love the people we're serving, but like there's these other pressures that aren't the game, that aren't the people, that are just like, they get so heavy sometimes where it makes me want to just walk away. And again, as I'm reading this book.
You hadn't read the book at this time.
I hadn't read it yet.
Okay.
And as I'm reading this, where it's like,
did you know anything about you know nothing? Okay.
I didn't know what Atlas Shrugged meant. I was just like, oh, it's Atlas. I didn't know that. And it was like when I read this title, like, what would you tell Atlas if this was happening to shrug? And I was like, oh, that's why they call it Atlas Shrugged. And then I remember feeling like vividly feeling the pressure of this calling, right? And how heavy it is. And there's been so many times I wish like, okay, sometimes it'd be so nice to walk away or to shrug or whatever. And so like I instantly, like with Dagny's character, I was like, I feel it with Hank Reardon. Like I had so much empathy and like understood their characters because like I feel that so many times. Like I just felt like Hank Reardon just wanted to invent his steel and put it out. That's all he cared about, right? For me, funnels are my art. Like I can't draw, but like funnels are that's my art, and entrepreneurship, like that's my art. And so I just want to do my art. That's it. Like he just want to create still, and it's all these other things. And it's like I just want to do my steel. Like how do I? I just want to do my art. Why do I have to deal with all this other stuff? And so as I'm reading this, like I just had so much empathy for the characters because I felt like I was the characters, even though it was weird because it's railroads and stuff like that.
Right.
But, and I'm internet. But I think that's why I really got into it. And then I got just curious, like what happens? Like, how does this story end? Because I'm in the middle of it. And if you depending who's listening, you may or may not have felt some of these pressures. As you grow, you feel them. It's interesting as ClickFunnels is growing. We talked about like the pressure that I feel today would have crushed me 5 years ago. Right. And it's like, you have to go through this thing. We build capacity to handle the next set of pressure and build capacity. And nowadays, like stuff happens daily. That's just like, man, that would have destroyed me 5 or 6 years ago, And so I think if you guys haven't felt that, as you grow, as you continue to try to like get your message out and try to grow your businesses or whatever, like the bigger you get, the more that pressure comes.
Do you think with that, and I want to continue that because it's such a good conversation, but like with that, with the pressure, the things that are happening now, like daily, that would have like wrecked you 5 years ago or 3 years ago, like whatever it was. Do you think it's good though that they did wreck you back, or that they would have, like, is it good that at the capacity that you understood that you took those things seriously then, or would it have been better for you to just like be in this mindset? Like, I know it's not possible, but like looking back, like if you could like snap your fingers and back then would have had the mental capacity to ignore all of those things and like go up, would that have been a good thing? Or like the fact that you went through all those things, does that help?
Going through it is what makes you worthy of the things, right? It makes you ready for it. Otherwise, it's like lifting weights. Like you try to squat 800 pounds, you're like, that's what it feels like, right? Your legs buckle and you die. But because you went through that things, you're able to have the capacity to hold the weight.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, so I think for me, that was the big thing is reading this. And so I was just like fascinated because I was like, this is kind of my story. Like how does it end?
How long did it take you to get through it?
I'd say about 2 months. I got a lot of it done the boat, and then I got into biking for a little while. So I was like, listen to biking.
That's
right.
I
just kept biking, like one more chapter. I got really good shape because of it. But it's funny because, one of the premises, and they don't say greed is good, but there's a chapter, I think it's called Greed. And I remember, if you guys have ever seen Wall Street, Gordon Gekler talks about greed is good. And I never understood that premise, right? In the book, they start talking about like how like greed is what drives this whole thing. Is it called Greed?
I'm trying to find it.
There's so many chapters. It's towards the end because I was on the green belt with
the
James
Utopia of Greed.
Utopia of Greed, yeah.
And then Anti-Greed. So Utopia of Greed and then Anti-Greed.
So what's interesting is because all of us are taught that greed is bad, right? Like that's just like, you shouldn't be greedy. Like that's I think a principle that's instilled in most of us. But then I think about, for me, when I started this business, why did I start this business? I want to make money.
Yeah.
That's greed, right? You think about any of us, like we go through a phase in all of our lives that greed is the driving factor, right? Yeah. When I wanted to become a good wrestler, I wanted to become like, I want to become a good wrestler. It's greedy.
Yeah.
I went and got coaches and spent all my time I was in a very selfish time in my life. Not that it's bad, but it's a very greedy time, right? Kids, when they're first born, like I love my kids. They're not in a bad way, but they're greedy. It's about them, right?
Right.
And it's this growth phase where you have to be greedy during the growth phase, right? When you're trying to learn, you're sucking things in, you're learning, and you're not contributing it. You're just learning, you're growing. And it was interesting because as I'm going through this, I'm like, the greed is what got me into business, right? And it's what got these things started. And then the byproduct of that is jobs were created and things like all the byproduct of it is like, I think in the book how it justifies like Hank Reardon going after he wanted to build a steel and make a bunch of money, created tens of thousands of jobs and changed the world and changed all these things. And so the premise in the book is that greed is this driving force that gets you moving. And it is. Like if you think about any aspect of your life, from sports to education to business to everything, like it starts with greed. Now, and we'll go deeper in this. I don't want everyone to think that I'm just into this further because there's a transition point. We'll talk about it in a minute, but there's a transition point from growth to contribution that happens.
Yeah.
But that's in the book where I start talking about that. And I remember I was on the Greenbelt here in Boise, riding my bike with James P. Frill, listening to this when I'm listening to that chapter. And I was trying to think, like, is this true? Like, did I get started because of greed? And it's like, yeah, I didn't start a business. I want to change the world. Eventually that happened, but it wasn't like greed was the driving force that moved me forward. I think it moves all of us forward for such a long time. And as I was listening, as I'm riding my bike, I'm like, yes, I understand this. And then the other half of me was like, I started thinking about my spiritual upbringing, right?
Yeah.
I'm very Christian. I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And I started thinking about Christ and his teachings, which are like, honestly, the opposite of that, right? It's like
really the polar opposite.
Yeah.
Which is, it's funny whenever you say that, people are like, Jesus was a socialist. I hear that a lot. I'm like, you need to read the Bible. But anyway, but like, I think
he definitely is way more liberal leaning. 100%.
Right. And I think that's where Republicans, conservative, like traditionally on that side of the aisle, like fiscally Republicans get into trouble is like, we're like, yeah, we're Christians, but like, we just want to get rich. And like, they never talk about like all the stuff that like people like to use Christianity, I feel like, as like when it's convenient. And they don't.
We call it cafeteria Christians.
Right.
They pick and choose the things off the menu they want.
Right. And then they go through and do it. So I definitely want to dive further into that, but continue that.
Yeah. So that started this question in my head though, of just like, so is greed bad then, or is it good? Or like, where does it fit in the whole grand scheme of things? Because it is something that's instilled in all of us from birth, right? When you're born, you're a baby. If you didn't have greed, you would just die, right? It's me, like, I need food, I need love, I need shelter, which makes you cry, which creates people coming to you. Like it's greed is this driving force that's instilled in humans from birth, right? Like when we come here, greed is what helps us survive the first part of our life. And at first I was having this like conundrum. I'm just like, like, is this book evil? Like, I don't know what to do with myself, right? But I'm like, all the good things in my life that happened initially because of seed of greed started me on motion, right? Started me in momentum. And then I started thinking, if you've read the Expert Seekers book,
which if you haven't,
you must hate money. Come on. No, but in the beginning of Expert Seekers book, I talk about this concept as well, where as an expert, there's two phases we go through. The first is a growth phase, right? Like, I want to be an expert in whatever. You go through and you're a consumer, right? You're consuming everything. And that's greed, right? And then there's this transition point where eventually you keep trying to grow, right? Trying to learn everything, I'm listening to all the podcasts, I'm reading all the books, I'm growing. And eventually there's this point. I remember feeling it in multiple parts of my life. In wrestling, I felt it. In business, I felt it, where you can't continue. Like, it gets hard. Like your ability to grow through consumption slows to almost like a halt, where you can't continue to grow, right? And so for me, it's like, I've shared the story. I think I shared it in the book with wrestling. It was like, I was a really good wrestler. I was a high school state champ. I was took second place in the nation. I was an All-American. And my senior year, I got invited to go to a wrestling tournament. And my wrestling camp, my coach was like, hey, do you want to come coach wrestling this summer? And I was like, why would I do that? What's in it for me?
I'm sorry.
Is my mic?
Can you guys
hear me?
Can you guys hear me? Okay. I'm just watching this over here, just making sure. Can you guys hear me all right? If you guys hear me all right, then I'm not gonna freak out about it. But I just want to make sure that we're not like accidentally missing like half this stuff. Okay, cool. Okay. I do want to, before you go on here, I want to ask you something. Is this, so you're riding your bike, chapter, like wrestling with this whole greed thing. Is this the first time that you've thought about greed in this way? Like, is this the first time? So you and this is how long, this is what, 6 months ago?
Not even that, probably through maybe 4 months ago.
So you've built most of ClickFunnels, of what ClickFunnels is today. And now this is the first time, like, you're really sitting down and like wrestling with this idea of like greed, and is it bad? Is it good? Like, what's the balance there and stuff like that?
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. It never crossed my mind really. And then I started, like, it became this thing where like it bothered me, because I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I don't want to be a greedy like, you know what I mean?
Right.
And I'm like, I don't feel like I am, but I was stuck. I couldn't figure that out. Right. And so I'll rewind to the wrestling story, because I think I'll set it up.
Yeah.
But my senior year, so again, I'd been growing as a wrestler. I was going to camps. I was getting coaching, and I was greedy, right? I was sucking up everyone's brain power I could, and I became a really good wrestler because of it. And then my coach asked me to go coach at a wrestling camp. So I say yes, go to the wrestling camp. And I remember he's like, okay, I need you to teach. My best move is cheap. Like, I'm really good at tilts. So the wrestlers out there, I'm really good at cheap tilts. And he's like, teach these kids how to do cheap tilt. And I was like, okay, like, so I walk out of like 30 kids. I'm like, hey, you do this, like, you just do it like that. And they all look at me and they go try it and they try to do cheap tilt and they all just fall apart. And I'm like, you're just dumb. It's like, it's not that hard. I'm like, come back in. No, you did it all wrong. That's how you do it. I show them again. Like, go do it. They go back out. Nobody can do it. And then all of a sudden I'm like, gosh, like they're missing something. What is it? So I have them come back in. I start breaking down like, hey, for the move to work, like your hips have to be here. Your legs have to be here. I start walking through all the things. And as I'm doing that, I start realizing like, oh, the reason why I'm able to do this is because of this. And I started realizing what I was doing as I was teaching people. As I taught it to people, then the kids started doing it and they got better and better. And all of a sudden I started realizing like, oh my gosh, like this movement works because of this. And now that I was aware of the situation, now I was able to like make these tweaks and stuff of my own. And like, I realized that by coaching other kids, that was the next level of growth. It was the shift from like selfish greed growth to contribution. And so after that, I started coaching camps every year. And that's how I started, I went from like slowing down my progression to like all of a sudden it sped back up again by shifting from growth to contribution. Okay. And so I think the same thing happens in business, right? I got in business because that seed of greed is in us. It gets us moving, gets us into momentum. And some people never get out of that. Some people live their entire lives chasing greed and they die. And it's a tragedy, right? But I think for most people, there's this transition point. I don't know where it happens different spots for everyone, where all of a sudden you realize you make the money, you start the business, and you realize how unfulfilling that is, right? You're tapping out. You're like, I'm not growing anymore. Like I thought I wanted money, but I don't. I want growth. Like that's what we're here on this planet for, is to grow as humans, right? And you don't get that, and all of a sudden you realize money's not fulfilling. But then you start seeing the other people you're contributing to, how you're helping, and then it shifts to like, we hear people talk about like my business is about impact, it's about growth, it's about helping other people, and like that's that transition. That's charity, love. That's pure love of Christ, right? It's that transition. But greed is the seed that gets us moving, right? And so there's this like this handoff that doesn't happen all the time. And are you guys cool if I get like share scripture stuff? Because like 100%. All this stuff is scriptural. Like it's not just
they don't get to decide, Russell. Okay. I get to decide. It's my podcast.
We can scriptures, close your ears and go. Yeah. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. So I wrote down some scripture. Like this is a scripture. So because it illustrates this point. Like I think it's so good.
Also, I just want to say Russell voxed me, and he said that this is the first episode of a podcast that he's ever prepared for. And I just feel like when you said that, I'm like, I was the first for something for Russell. Let's go.
I want to be ready. Okay, so this is the scripture. It says, for the natural man is an enemy to God and has been from the fall of Adam and will be forever and ever. And I'm stopping right there. Okay, so natural man is the enemy of God. Why is that? We're born, we have this greed inside of us. So the natural human is the enemy of God because we're chasing after greed, right? But God gives us that seed because it's what creates momentum. It creates motion. It creates us doing something, right? And then it says in here, it says, for the natural man is the enemy of God and has been from the fall of Adam and will be forever and ever. And then this is the transition point. Unless he yields to the enticings of the Holy Spirit. So he'll be if he's greedy forever, right? Forever and ever, unless he yields to the enticings of the Holy Spirit and putteth off the natural man and becometh a saint through the atonement of Christ the Lord, and becometh as a child, submissive, meek, humble, patient, full of love, willing to submit to all things which the Lord seeth fit to inflict upon him, even as the child does submit to his father. So growth is the seed. It's the natural man. It's the thing we have it's good, right? God gives it to us because it gets us to do stuff, gets us to learn, it gets us to not die in our crib, like because we need love and attention and get fed, right? It's the thing that gets us off our butts, off the couch. It's us being producers. It gets us moving. And if we're not careful, though, the natural man will destroy us. Like you see so many people who have made tons of money and they destroy themselves in their lives because they don't do that second thing, which is unless he yields to the enticing of the Holy Spirit. That's the thing saying, this is not about money. This is about the impact. Look at the people you're changing, and it shifts, right? If you make that shift, and all of a sudden now the thing you're creating is not about greed. It's like, oh my gosh, like I remember for ClickFunnels, like when I had that transition, it's like when I started seeing Brandon and Caitlin Poland, I started seeing the ripple effect of their business. I started seeing and I can name hundreds of people, like person after person after person. I was like, this isn't about money. This is about the ripple effect of what we've created each person's life. And like, now that's charity. That's love. That's like, now the mission isn't about money. Like we don't care about them. Like, we keep score with money, but that's the mission, is the people's lives and the impact. And I think that's that transition where it's like greed is the thing that gets us moving. But if we don't have that, I think that's what happened in the book. We talked about, like, you said this in my house earlier, like a lot of people in the book seem like they have a miserable life. And it's like, yeah, because they never yielded to the Spirit. Like they never made that shift. It was all greed to the point where they let everything collapse, as opposed to like,
yeah. So one of the things about the book, and I'm sitting on the plane, like on the way over here, and I'm like, how do I articulate this? Because that's always the hardest thing. Like you have this idea in your head and you're like, how do I get it out and explain it in a way that somebody else can be like, yes, I understand that. But like and I'm going to go kind of political here for a second. I'm going to like bring it back to specific to the book. So like I am pretty vocally a conservative, right? I'm a blatant Trump supporter, very much so conservative when it comes to everything fiscal, but I call myself a libertarian because I actually think that I lean left on a lot of social issues. Like I think the government should stay out of gay marriage, right? Like there's a lot of things that like I like lean left on, but when it comes to like money and like finances and like things like that, like I lean to the right. But like the reason I lean to the right and I typically go with the right is because like I like what the left is trying to do in concept, right? It's like, okay, there's a bunch of like people that are really truly in need. Like I agree, we need to help them. The problem is that the way they go about doing it, I like so radically disagree with. It's like against everything I stand for, right? I'm like, it's not that I disagree with what you want to do, is I disagree with how you want to do it.
Yeah.
What's interesting is I feel like in this book, I feel like it's like the opposite. I actually don't agree with why they're doing it. Like this concept of like, I mean, Hank Reardon says it like over and over again, like everything that I do is for profit. That is it. It is not for you, even to his friends, right? Like he took a bullet for John Galt, right? Like he gets shot and like John Galt thanks him for it. He goes, you know, I only did it because it's what I wanted to do, right? Like literally like saves a guy's life. He's like, so it's like, it's all about what he wants and only for him. And that's it. And it's like profit and money and dollars. It's not about everything that he helps. And I'm like, I disagree with that premise. Like I don't, but what that leads to, I actually do like. And I feel like it's flipped compared to like the world that like I'm living in now. It's like half the stuff that the Democrats, or I don't need politics so bad, but like
left and right.
The left, the left guys, we're going to say left and right generalized here. All right. Oh my God. But like generally speaking. And so when it comes to like the whole greed issue, I'm like, it's interesting to hear your perspective. Like, cause I never, even throughout the book, I'm like, greed is a bad thing. And like hearing your perspective and like hearing what it says, I'm like, okay, like I understand what you're saying, but like what, like, is it greed or is there some other driving? Like if I were to ask you a year ago, right? When were you in like the heart of ClickFunnels? Like a year and a half ago, 2 years? Like there was a time of your life with I don't know all you do is ClickFunnels, but like when like
last 6 years of my life.
But you know what I mean? Like, wasn't there like a year or two period in there, like in the growth phase where it was like 100% of everything you do is just like ClickFunnels, closes. Felt like you were going nonstop. It feels like you're a little bit more balanced now. Maybe not. But like from the outside perspective, looking at it does. Anyway, like during that time, like of growing ClickFunnels, but like before you read that, would you have described yourself as greedy?
No.
What would you have described yourself as? Like, what's that word?
I don't know. That's a good question. Like I was always trying to create stuff, like it's art for me, right? So it's like I was trying to create stuff. But I think initially I was creating it for myself as opposed to like, oh my gosh, I create this for myself, but look what happens to the people.
What point was that shift for you though?
I think you can actually, you can see it in my marketing, by the way. And by the way, for those who are greedy capitalists who only care about money, like it actually is a better marketing way too. Like my marketing went from
for all you greedy capitalists out there, switch to being a contributor, make more money.
Well, think about like my marketing was always like, here's Russell, here's how much money my funnel made, here's how much that, it was me talking about me all the time. And I realized it's like this, like who cares about me? Like I don't care about me. Like let me show you what this person did. Like let me show you all the results of the people we're serving, like what's happening there. Which first off is better marketing. Second off, it's like it's that transition where I was literally like everything I've accomplished is stupid. Like what they're doing, like that's the real, like what we're doing, like that's the thing that's amazing. Right? Like that's the spiritual side of it. That's the thing where it's like the thing that got you into motion now is doing good in the world. And like when you start seeing that, it's like, oh my gosh, like that's so much more fulfilling and so much more exciting. And people ask me the last 6 years, like, why do you keep getting up? Do you need more money? I'm like, no, like that's not why I keep getting up. But I can tell you 100 stories of people who literally like the ripple effect of like how many lives they've changed because I did my thing. Right? Like Jamie, we made a documentary, the 2 Comma Club, and Jamie Cross has this whole part there where she's bawling her eyes out. And she said, where would my family be if Russell wouldn't have fulfilled his God-given calling? And like, every time I see that, I start bawling myself. I'm like, like, that's why I eventually started doing it. Right.
But when did that shift happen?
I don't know. It wasn't like a day that just happened. It just, the energy of it shifted. Right. It was like, I don't know. It was just, it gradually kind of happened. What's that?
Yeah.
Dave, come on in. Dave's
here. Dave, take the mic here.
Honestly, I think this has been one of the things. It's been fun for me to watch Russell from the sidelines here.
Yeah.
I think honestly, it was your dad's 60th birthday. And
how long ago?
I don't even know.
3 or 4 years ago, probably.
But it was the reflection on that. And it was the difference from having your hand raised versus because I remember you.
Yeah,
so
do you wanna
I'll
tell
let
that
you tell the
story?
story. Russell's a much better storyteller. I'll see the thought, but I'll let him finish.
All right.
Oh,
all
thank
right.
you.
Thank you, Dave.
Interesting.
Guys, we have a live audience here.
So yeah, my dad turned 60 and we have our little family reunion every year we do. And so it was during his birthday. And I remember my mom gave him $60, 6 $10 bills. And so just gave him one at a time. Said, okay, the first decade was like 1 to 10. Like, tell us something you remember about that. He's like, I don't remember anything back then. And the second one, he's like 10 to 20. That's when I was a wrestler. Like, you know, it was so much fun for me. And then 20 to 30, it was like, okay, that's when like I was starting my business, trying to figure things out and trying to get our family stable. 30 to 40, like that's when my kids were wrestling and I was coaching them. And then 50 to 60, kind of went through everything. And then after it was done, I asked myself, well, Dad, of all the decades, like what one was the best for you? Thinking in my world, like the best was going to be like when he was a wrestler. Cause I was like, for me, the greatest part of my life was like when I was wrestling. And my dad said the greatest decade is when I got to coach you. And I remember, I forgot that story until Dave said that, but I remember coming back and telling Dave and other people that I always thought like the best part was being the all-star, but for my dad, the best part was like coaching other people and
That was a good interjection there, Dave.
Yeah.
Huh.
Which was really cool. Anyway, so yeah, that's interesting.
Cool. Cause like what I'm trying to figure out, this is, it's open discussion here. So like, I am a pretty motivated, driven person, right? Like I would never have described what I was doing as greedy, right?
Would you have thought that when you were an athlete? Or thought when you were a kid? No, but what is it?
Well, yeah, and that's why I asked you the question because I don't know the answer for myself. Like,
but I felt the same way because I never liked it. It wasn't until I was reading the book and said it started the utopia of greed.
Yeah.
And also I started thinking, I'm like, all these things we're doing, like we call them growth, we call them whatever, which is awesome, but it's a greedy time of your life, right? Like,
yeah. I wonder what the actual definition of greed is.
Yeah,
I'm gonna look this up. Let's see. Hold up. Definition of greed.
It has a definite negative connotation in our world today.
Intense and selfish desire for something, especially money, power, or food.
Or food.
Well, there you go. All right. money, power, or food.
But for me, like think about the lens of wrestling. When I was wrestling, I had a selfish desire I wanted to be a state champ, and I wanted to be an All-American, I wanted to be a national champ.
Why?
Because I wanted my hand raised. Like that's all I thought about. So I dreamt about. Like I couldn't. Like I'm a very obsessive person. That's why I don't gamble. Because I was like, I put a quarter in and I win, I'm broke. Doesn't matter what I start with, it's gone, right? And I know that about myself. So like when I started wrestling and I got my hand raised the first time, I was like, that feels good. I want to feel that every day for the rest of my life. And I just went blinders on, and that's all I did. That was and I was like, and again, I would have thought it was as greedy, but by definition, it's like a singular focus on these things, like about yourself, right? And then now I'm in the phase of my life where I'm coaching wrestling, coaching my kids and stuff like that. And it's like, it's different because now like, there's nothing in it for you, right? Except for seeing their hand raised and the light in their eyes go off. And it's just like, oh, like that felt way better than my own. But you don't know that till you're in that phase.
Did having kids change that for you at all? Like did it help solidify or give you a different perspective on that shift from greedy to?
I think maybe not so much solidify as much as like I'm experiencing it now in multiple parts of my life, not just the business part, right? In a lot of part, you think about like our success stories in our business are our children, right? The children of ClickFunnels or whatever you want to say. They're the people that have come off it. So it's like I think I'm experiencing it now with them, and it's been interesting and fun. And yeah.
How long did it take you to finish the book?
I think about 2 months.
Oh wow. Okay.
You read it way faster. I was like, dude, that's fast.
Well, okay. So it's one of those things. It's funny because my mom was like, "Have you even read the book?" I'm like, "What do you mean? You made me read it in high school? Like what?" And I went back and I was like, "Oh, I didn't actually read. Like I knew the book, and so I assumed I had read it, and then I realized it was 1,200 pages, and I was like, "Oh, I don't remember reading a 1,200 page book. Like I feel like I would remember that."
So I don't know if I gotta go read it right now because Russell's gonna be talking.
Right. Well, and that's exactly what happened. So it was like, "Oh, I'm gonna we want to do this, cool," and I could have sat down and had the conversation without reading the book. Like, you know what I mean? Because I knew the concept of the premise. And so then I went through it and was like, every night, 2.5 speed, I couldn't sleep. I'd get up and like, oh man, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, close the book, go back in there. So
I want to kind of interject because there's something you started on that I want to make sure we don't miss because I think it was, you started leading really good. There's something when I wrap it because it's an open loop in my head now.
Okay.
You start talking about how you agree on the left side of social helping people, but not the way that they do it. Is that how you said it?
Yeah.
Okay, so
I agree with what they want to do.
Yes.
I don't agree with how they want to do it.
Okay, so this is something that was powerful. So after I read the book, I was like geeking out, and I'm like, who is this Ayn Rand? I want to see. So I started searching her, And I found an interview she did on Donahue in 1980, like 3 months after her husband passed away. And it was fascinating interview. And if you guys know, she is she's atheist, does not believe in a God, all these things like that, right?
Yeah, so she even like made a statement about how like part of the reason that she wrote the book was to prove that religion was fake and like to like destroy all belief in any form.
So once again, I don't
super different.
This is not the Bible for me. This is just like a simulating book that just got my mind spinning. But one thing she said during the interview that was like so cool, because Donahue's like, so based on this, you believe that we should all be producers and greedy and keeping all our money, and we shouldn't help anybody. And she's like, no, that's not what I said. She's like, I never said that. She said, what I did say is that it should not be the government coming to you with their guns saying, give me your 50% of your taxes. Like that's what's messed up, right? You think about this, like if you give a gift, like if someone comes to you and gives you a gun, like, hey, give your friend a gift. Like, are you actually giving them a gift? No, you're not. And that's like, if you don't pay the taxes, they put you in jail. Like that's the thing. She said, people should go and support people on their own, right? This comes back to, this is the whole thing I talked about before, like the natural man's enemy to God, an enemy to God, and has been, for fallout, less yields enticing the Holy Spirit. So us yielding and saying, hey, I have all this money, I should go help other people with this. That's God saying, you should not be greedy. Use what you've been blessed with and help other people's lives, right? Them coming to you with a gun saying, pay your taxes, you go to jail, is not you giving a gift. Like it's them taking it from you and giving it away. So like, you're not a better person because you did it, right? So, and then we can get into the whole depth of like, this is the government now who's the worst run organization in the history of all time, which I only ran on that. But that's like, do you want to trust them with the money, right? And so I just want to share a practical example. So, because people are like, well, you wouldn't give money if you didn't, whatever. And I'm like, okay, right now I'm taxed more than 50%. So more than half my income goes to Uncle Sam, right? And he's doing whatever the crap they do.
Well, you just need some cash flow tactics. Shameless plug.
Anyway, I have no tax. I don't do my tax. But you know what I mean? That's the tax bracket. So, but then you look at like when you yield enticing the Holy Spirit. So there was a time when my friend Stu McLaren is like, hey, we're building schools in Kenya and this is a mission and we believe in it. Will you help? Right? It wasn't greedy rustling. I'm going to help and this is going to be awesome. Yeah. I felt something. I was like, oh my gosh, that is a great cause. Yeah. Here, how can I support you? Right? In that process, you can see here's pictures of Stu and Amy in Kenya. We've been to Kenya 4 times now. We've donated money. We built schools. Like that is a gift versus like, give us money so we can go do something with it. Right. And then a couple years later, I heard about Operation Underground Railroad and I was like, oh my gosh, I felt the Spirit saying, this is a good cause. You should serve. You should do this thing. Right. And I put time and energy and money into this thing. We raised multiple millions of dollars now to save children from sex slavery. Right. And not everyone's willing to do that. Right. Like, again, there's a segment of people that will, it comes back to your like, natural man's enemy God will be fallen out and will be forever. Like a lot of people never get off the greed boat. But most people, as you start making more and more money, you look at anybody, look at Bill Gates, look at Elon Musk, anyone's making a bunch of money. What do they do with their money? Eventually they start giving it to charity, start helping people, like all these things, because there's that transition point where you feel that you hear the voice, you hear God, whatever you want to call it. It's like you should be serving more. And I know that if my tax went from 50% to 20% to 10% or whatever that thing was, I would and could give so much more, and everybody could. Right now, it's half the money goes to organizations that, what's happening with the money? Do we know? Do we see any ledger of what's happening? I mean, it's insane.
Even Bill Mayer, do you know Bill Mayer?
I know who he is. I don't.
Okay, I mean, like stupid. I mean, like super left, right? I mean, like definitely would not align with our political views or your political views or my political views. But even him is like, I have no idea what my tax dollars are going to. Like, I have no idea where my millions of dollars that I pay in every.
That's scary.
Isn't that crazy? Like only the government.
It's crazy.
Okay.
And then they look at like, sorry, this is a plug for OUR and Tim Ballard. Like Tim Ballard, I know, does not take a salary. His payment for being CEO of Operation Underground Railroad and risking his life day in and day out is $0 they pay him. He funds it himself. Like all of the money he makes is from his books, his speaking, other things he does externally to pay for himself because he doesn't want to take money from the organization that's saving kids. Whereas can you say that about any of the government? Like, no, it's insane. It's anyway, but yeah. So for me, it's like
somebody's going to mention that Trump takes $0 salary in there. That's not what we're talking about.
But for me, it's like, that's my big thing is just like understanding that, I think that there's this blend of left and right. Like, right. There's like, if we're not producing, like the fact that I'm willing to wake up every morning and kill myself, even though I have more money than I'm ever going to need, now we have 400 plus people who have full-time jobs here. Full-time jobs here at ClickFunnels. There's 144,000 people who have active ClickFunnels accounts. Who each of those people, if they had one employee, it's 144,000 jobs, right? They have 2 to 3. I mean, you're looking at it's probably $500,000 to $1 million jobs have been created because of ClickFunnels, because we get up every day and we're, we're chasing things, we're producing, right? And it's like, if you take away the incentives of that, like I'd have to let half my staff, and we have to which then things shrink and everything starts disappearing really quickly. Where it's like, if they took that away, it's like, now we can go and how much more good can we do? And we did the OUR, we talked about OUR and show the documentary at Funaki Live. And since then, I don't know, 4 or 5 dozen people who were in our community show the OUR documentary at their events and made money. And it's like this ripple effect keeps growing, growing versus the other side where it shrinks. And anyway.
Okay. So I want to get non-specifically political here though, for a second with this. And I don't want to say play the devil's advocate. I just want to understand like your thoughts on this. So the argument on the other side, if you will, right? The people that are more traditionally like higher tax bracket, like, you should be taxed even higher, right? Like we want to take more of your money away because it's this. Basically the thought process is like, listen, you have donated your money to Kenya and to Operation Underground Railroad and like things like that. But like, guess what? There's probably like people here in your own community, like in Boise, like for example, right? Or like wherever these entrepreneurs are that like you have millions and millions of dollars. Like there's people that are homeless, or there's people that can't afford medical, like medical payments, or there's people that are like genuinely need help. And so like the argument is like, okay, like, yeah, like you've given some, but like you have so much of it, like you could do that and be taxed higher, right? Like we could take even more of your money and like your life wouldn't change it at all. And we're also like not talking about your business money. We're only talking about profit. Like we're only going to take like that part of it away. And so like the argument on the other side is if collectively, and I'm just going to make up a number here, let's just say there's like 10,000 entrepreneurs like you in America that have millions of dollars or billions of dollars. I know you don't have billions, but like billions of dollars. We could like take all that money and hypothetically we could solve a lot of these issues, right? We could tax the top 10 richest people, or like whatever. Why doesn't that work? Like, or A, I guess it's a 2-part question. A, why doesn't that work? And B, what is your solution for that, if any? Like, what's your perspective, like your view, like how that would help?
Yeah, well, I think,
or can you not help everybody?
This is the fun part of politics, right? It's tough, and I'll preface this before we dive into the actual question, but like it's tough because there's good on both sides and there's bad on both sides. Like that's the hardest thing, right? And so that's the hard thing is you argue both ways. But it's me so let's say me as an entrepreneur, because I only know experiences in my own self, right?
Right.
I know what I pay in taxes every single year. I know how much goes away. I know how much I make, and it's tough because like the more like the less you make for the more you work, the less incentivized you are to keep working, right? Like if my take home was $100,000 a year, I'd be like, well, why am I killing myself, right? Like I could work 3 hours a day and make that. So why would I keep doing this stuff, right? Like if there's no reward, then it's hard, right? It's like, what's the purpose of doing any of this stuff, right? And it'd be really easy to then shrink back, and company shrinks, employees shrink, like everything shrinks because there's no incentive for us to risk everything, right? Like it's a risk reward thing. So that's a big part of it. Like, how do you solve it? I don't know. I don't think the solution is the government coming with a gun and saying, give us half your money so we can go solve this problem. I think it's like, man, what are the things that you're interested in saving? What are the things that touches your heart? What are the things that you're inspired to actually help? For me, it's Kenya. For me, it's this. For me, there's other things that we give money to that I don't talk about publicly. But there's things that like what are the things I care about? Like, let me focus there, because everyone's got different agendas, right? Like I had Matt Maddox, someone who Caleb Maddox's father. He's a super awesome guy. He came to me and he's like, hey, my mission is to save these kids off the streets and this stuff, all these kind of things. I was like, that's amazing. Like, can you help me? I'm like, that's not my calling. My calling are these things here. That's your calling, dude. I respect it. I support it. Like, I'll help you with money or whatever I can do to help, but that's your calling. Like, God gave you that. Like, that was the thing that you were given.
Yeah.
That's the mantle you're in charge of. And everyone's got different mantles. So like your calling is be different than mine. Like people come all the time, like, oh, like that charity's cool, but I would support this. Like, good. I don't care who you support.
Right.
Like, everyone's got different callings and they're all good. Like, so I think we should be able to say, like, what's the thing that speaks to our heart and thing that we're passionate about. And that's where we should focus our time and our energy and our money on. Not, again, don't come with a gun saying, give me a 50% because I think it should go over here. Like, that's
so. But what about the people though that, like, let's pretend, and guys, I love Elon Musk. I'm going to use him purely as an example. Clearly, I have no idea what he does with his money, but let's pretend, right? So Elon Musk, he makes all his money. Like, what if he wasn't charitable? Like, should the government or anybody be able to come in and be like, yo, you have so much money, right? Or Zuckerberg, or like, you have so much money, right? Like, you got, I don't know, he's worth $90 billion. Let's say he has $3 billion in liquid cash. I'm just hypotheticals here, right? Like, you got $3 billion, like literally sitting here. we're going to take that away. And we're going to give you, like, you can have 500 million of it, but we're going to take 2.5 billion and like give it to people that actually need it. Like, do you think that there needs to be some overriding law or power or something that's like, yo, you can't just hoard. You gotta, if you have more than enough, like, you gotta go and give it back. Or do you think that's a personal choice?
I think it's a personal choice. Because think about how many jobs has he created? Like, he's giving that stuff, and this is the reward that's the risk and reward side of things, right? And like his 3 billion, let's say, like, what's his next thing? Like, he's not just going to sit on it. Like, that's stupid for him, for anybody, right? It's like he's going to go invest in the next thing. He's going to create more jobs, to do more things, to stimulate the economy in different ways, right? Like, he's going to go and start PayPal, and then start Tesla, and then start sending rocket ships to the space. Like, like a producer's going to produce because they want to produce. Like, it's the art for them, right? And so, like, let them create art, because the byproduct of art is jobs. It is stimulation of the economy, make all those things happening. And so it's like, for me, like, building funnels is my art. I couldn't care less about the revenue that comes from it. Like, but I need the revenue to be able to hire the teams and the people and the things we need to be able to continue to art, to pay Zuckerberg, to show my ads on the thing. Like, all these things are part of it. And so I think, yeah, if he's sitting on 3 billion, it's just sitting there. But producers don't typically do that. They're reinvesting. They're doing stuff with it. So it creates more.
I want you to come up with a story on the spot. Go, which you're pretty good at. But like, I want you to talk about that. Producers produce. Like, I think that might be one of the, actually, I'm curious to know, like, I feel like that is one of the most misunderstood thing about the ultra wealthy. The people that are like, actually, not like, okay, I inherited $200 million because I'm a trust fund baby, right? Like, but like the Elon Musks of the world, the Jeff Bezos of the world, the Russell Brunsons of the world, like, what ultimately drives you to go keep doing more? Like, you have all of the money, and I know, we talked about like like, you want to contribute back for it, but like, there's a million different ways you can contribute. Like, why do you do the things that you do? And because I feel like one of the misunderstood things is, and this is something that, like, I don't know how to explain it to people that don't know. I told my fiance, I was like, you should like listen to Russell, because I'm like, he thinks like I think like that, right? Like, you know what I mean? I'm like, you can't, if you don't understand me, like, maybe you could like see it from somebody else and like know that I'm not weird. I mean, I am, but like, there's other people like me. You know what I mean? Like that, they think like this. But it's like, how would you explain to somebody that like Elon Musk is gonna do what Elon Musk does, right? He's Elon Musk, right? Like Zuckerberg, like these guys,
Reardon.
right? Like whoever, Russell Brunson, like, you're gonna do what you do because that's who you are. Like, you build things, and the result of, or like, because you need to build things, like, you need resources. And so you're like, man, if I want to go build this thing over here, I need $100 million, or I need $10 million. Cool, I'm just gonna go make that money. I'm gonna go do it here. And like, you're basically just like organizing things, right? You're either creating or you're organizing. Like, how does that mentality work? Like, I don't think the average person understands that. And I think that's one of the big misconceptions of, because this goes back to the greed thing. And the reason I really don't like the word greed is because like, there is so much misconception about it. Although I will say the definition says that it's probably that, but it's like,
it is a negative word. The connotation is super negative,
but it's like, you don't exclusively do it because you're greedy. It's like, you do it because you don't know how to do anything else. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's
sorry. Alex Sharfin. Mm-hmm. We can't turn it off, and we don't understand why anybody would watch it. Yes. Like that. Yeah. That's the thing.
We think about it, it's creation. Like, why was man put on this earth? Like, were we put on earth to like wake up, watch TV, and go back to bed? Like, no, like, we have creative powers in our body. That's how husband and wife get together. You have children. Like, we create. Like that's the mission on earth. Like, we're always creating, right? And it's like, like any of us, like, when you get married, and it's like, we need to go create something. We need a house where we're going to live at. You need to create things to be able to get a job, to be able to organize matter, to be able to make, we have a house now we can move into. And it's just like, that's the thing. I think that so many people though, they become, I think the word that Garrett White uses, he uses the best, sedated, where like there's pain. And so because of the pain, they're sedated. So they just sit in this moment of they don't want the pain, right? It's because the pressure was too heavy for them at one point. It hurts so bad that they say, I have to stop, right? Versus what I talked about, like over the last 6 years, like, I got destroyed and then increased capacity and destroyed. And so there's two sets of people. There's the people that aren't producing, they're sedating because they're afraid of the pain. They're nervous of the pain. They're trying to hide from the pain. I get that. Like, there's been seasons of my life where I have felt pain and I just want to hide, and I have, right? But then there's seasons of your life, at least hopefully and I wish everybody could experience it, because the opposite, where you're in the creation zone, where you're creating and you're doing, and it's hard. Both of them are hard. They're different hards, right? One is there's so much fear. There's so much like just trying to get out of the pain. And the other one is just like, you create to create, right? Like, you could ask my team, like, we build a funnel. And for me, it's just like, oh, look at this thing we created, or create a product or an event or whatever. And it's like the creation of the thing and then sharing it with people. Like that's, yeah, like, I don't know. And I think it was the same way, like when I was wrestling, that was my art at the time. And it was just like I didn't want to do anything besides wrestling. Like we went to terms on like, what's the next term? What's the next thing? We're just like, we kept doing that like my entire life. Cause that was the art at the while. And just, you want to keep performing what you're doing. Right. And I think that, if you can get out of that sedation that most people live in, which I say the majority of humans do.
And I think that's the issue, is that like for you and I, we create. Like entrepreneurs, funnel hackers, the free thinkers of the world, like they go out there and they create because it's like, that's what we do.
Yeah.
But like, I don't think that's how most of the world operates.
Yeah. They do initially, right? They're born, they have that seed of whatever you call it, growth, greed, whatever, right? But something happens in life where they get the pain and then they sedate because it's easier. I think it's one of the biggest problems. And I'm anti-drug, anti-everything that causes sedation, right? Because most of the world, I see this, especially like in entrepreneurial community, where people could be doing so much more, but instead they're sedating with drugs or alcohol or weed or whatever it is, because it's like, let me take the pressure off myself. And like, man, what a tragedy. Like you could be producing and changing some people's lives, but it's like, I need an outlet. And the outlet causes sedation and takes you out of your ability to produce. And I think the majority of people, like that's what they do. Like it drives me crazy. I see all the conversations on Facebook of like, you know, there's entrepreneur events, people come together and they literally, there's sessions they talk about what mushrooms they use to like hallucinate and all. Like, it just drives me nuts. I'm like, you guys are sedating to get out of this pain as opposed to stepping into the pain and creating and changing people's lives. And so I'm very vocal, anti all that kind of stuff. I think so many people like that's what they slip back into. One of the greatest blessings of my religion that I believe is like, I don't have these tools to sedate that most people use. And so it's like my outlet is creation, right? If my outlet was drinking, if my outlet was drugs, my outlet was these other things, like I wouldn't have been able to produce, but I don't. So my outlet's got to be what is it? Like production. Let's create something amazing. And I think that too many people let themselves off the hook and just like, oh, I could go create, or I'm gonna go watch TV, or I'm gonna go eat, or I'm gonna go, like, if your outlet is something that sedates you, that's taking you out of your creative zone. I think most people slip that because it's easier, it's cheaper, it doesn't cause the pain. You know, Garrett White's whole mission, Wake Up Warriors, waking men up from that sedated state that most of our society is stuck into, which is why I relate to him so well. Cause I see it in people I love that I care about. Just like, you're sedated. If we could break you out of that, you can get back to production and you can change the world. Yeah.
I think it's interesting. So I have a coach who I think did that for me. I mean, I don't use Garrett White, which he has an intense man. Oh my word. Garrett, if you're listening, I would love to talk to you. Come on the show. But I'm always plugging. Hey, if I ever get a guest, Elon Musk, if you're listening. Anyway, but like I have a coach, Katie Richardson. You know Katie. Yep. Katie is outside of like my immediate family and like Leah, obviously, like top 3 people that changed my life. Katie Richardson and Russell Brunson are 2 of those people that are in that top thing, right? And so Katie is someone that I work with like one-on-one, and I don't think I was ever sedated in the sense of like what you're talking about, but like the opposite of sedation is like being alive, right? And like really, truly like coming alive and like understanding like who you are and like what you are put on this earth here to do. And so like the thing that I struggled with for the longest time, even like from the beginning of days of this entrepreneur, is like right and wrong, right? I was like, I didn't want to do the wrong thing, right? I didn't want to take anybody off because that would be bad, right? Like, oh man, like you don't want to get into a fight because that's bad, right? I don't want to make too much money because that might be bad, right? I don't want to say the wrong thing because it might be bad, right? And so I like lived in this like universe, or that like this black and white of like, is it right or is it wrong, right? And like what Katie came along and she's like, Josh, like there is no right and wrong. Now there is in the sense of like there's moral right and wrong, and so but like I'm not going to go into that concept of like universal truth, but like I do believe there's absolute truth, but like in the sense of like our everyday life. It's not so much as like, is it the right thing or is it the wrong thing? It's like, what are you going to choose to do? But like, you can only know like what you're going to choose if you're alive, if you know who you are, and like, you know what you're put on this earth to do. And that's why it's funny. I think you may know this story. So my brother dies, helicopter crash, beginning of 2019, kind of wrecks my whole life. Ended up selling the company, sold the business to an investor, the business partner took over. And like Leah and I like went off, took her off around the world. And It's supposed to be this like 4-month long trip where I was going to like disconnect and just like figure out life and everything like that. And like Christmas time, it's about a week before Christmas. And we're in the Philippines in the middle of absolutely freaking nowhere. Like the nearest airport, hospital, anything is like 6 hours away, like absolute middle of nowhere. And Leah gets a intestinal eating parasite. Like she gets super, super sick, like can't sit up, can't keep food down. I'm like, oh my gosh, we're in the Philippines, in the middle of nowhere. And so like we go to the emergency room and we get there and it's like a card, like, I mean, it's like a piece of plywood with 2-inch foam and there's no doors on the bathroom, no toilet seat, there's ants crawling up the wall. It's like terrible, right? And so long story short, we end up having to cut our trip like 2 months early. We lose like tens of thousands of dollars in deposits, like getting her home and whatever. And like, I have no business at this point, right? We were supposed to be going for 2 months longer. I was supposed to fly home. Like I was supposed to come to Funnel Hacking Live. That was going to be like our coming home, right? And I find myself in like the basement of my girlfriend's mom's house the night before Christmas going like, what am I doing with my life? Right? Like, you know, like, how did I end up here? Right. And so I go through the process. I'm like, okay, I need a coach. And I, you know, go through it. I interview a bunch of different coaches and I end up like choosing Katie. And I'm like, all right, Katie, like you're going to solve all my business problems for me. You're going to help me make me all this money. You're going to help me build this $1 million business and everything like that. Right. And so the very, very first call, I'll never forget the very first question. And she's like, all right, vent. Like, I know you need to. I'm like, right? Like just brain dumb, like vent for like 20, 30 minutes straight. I'm like, what's the answer? She goes, Josh, who are you? I was like, really? Like, that's where we were going to start this whole conversation, right? Like, I just paid you 60 grand, right? Is that how this is where, and like looking back now, like that, and I do have a full circle with this, looking back now, figuring out who I was gave me my permission to go do what I was called to do, right? Without the fear of what anybody else thought. And like, I'm not trying to intentionally piss anybody off. I don't want people to actually hate me, right? But I'm so certain in what I'm doing and like knowing who I am that I know that I know I'm a contributor to society. Like I know that I'm making the world better what I do because I believe that everybody like deep down inside, like God has given them talents, right? And I believe that the thing that whatever it is that you're good at or that you like to do or whatever, like that's the talent that God gave you and you have a choice on how you're going to go out and use that. And I believe that you should use that to serve him. But like the problem is that I think like an overwhelming majority of the world has no idea who they are or what they're called to be. And because of that, the people like you or Elon or whoever, the producers of society that like know who they are, like what their talents are, like what they're called to do and like things like that. Like it's like you've seen my growth, right? Like you've watched me transition from this crazy, little kid to like this. And it's like, that came by learning who I was and like how I was contributing, like what I was doing, what I was called here, what I was put here for. And so when you talk about like sedation, I feel like that's the issue of they're sedated. And so they don't even know who they are. Like they don't even know how to tap into it. They don't know how to understand it. And because of that, they look at someone like you, they look at someone like me and they go, well, you're preventing me. Like you're taking away my ability to go do something because like you're taking all the money, right? Like you're taking all the opportunity or like you have a category king on the market. So like I can't go and do it then. So like to those people or this concept of because you're successful, I can't be successful. Like what is your response to that? Like how do you interpret that?
Yeah.
Like how do you help someone like shift to be like, just because I did it doesn't mean you can't.
Yeah. It's interesting because like it's funny because for me it's such a foreign thing to understand that. Like, and I see that so many times entrepreneurs where it's that mentality of like there's not enough money or not enough opportunities or resources, whatever. And I know this, like, man, the bigger problem that I have is there's so many opportunities every single day that's drowned. Like it's not there's not enough opportunities. There's so many. It's like how do you come up with it? And I think when people start understanding that, like, look around, like learn some basic skills, right? Like the original .com Secrets book I wrote because I'm like, if anyone took these principles and looked at any business, you could apply it and like, boom, like it just works. Like it's magic. Like there's not a business on this, like Adam's Eye Care. I can see right out the window, right? I can take .com Secrets principles, blow that company up overnight, right? And so like, if you have these tools, like you could do anything. You could sell phones, you can sell watches, you can sell books, you can sell podcasts. Like, so it's just like, I think when people start understanding that, like, it's just education. They don't understand it. I've had friends before like, oh, like life's tough right now. There's no opportunities. And just like, what? Like there are so many opportunities, but you have to have the skill set that actually, that it can produce it. Right. And I think so, a big frustration, obviously I think you have as well and we talked about this a little tonight with my kids, it's just like, a lot of things that we're equipped with are like school. Like the school system doesn't equip you to be able to capitalize on opportunities, right? It doesn't, unless you're like, I want to be a doctor. Cool. This is the process that now you can capitalize on being a doctor or being a dentist or whatever that traditional path is. To be able to like walk in and like make it rain somewhere, like those skill sets aren't taught in school, right? And you think about in any business, there's a couple personalities, right? There's like the entrepreneur who starts it, right? Then there's the managers who are managing the people. There's the technicians who are doing the thing, and there's the rainmakers who come in and make money. And it's like, if you learn that skill set, like how do you become a rainmaker? How do you go in and you can plug in any business or any opportunity and you can turn it into money? Like then every door you walk past, there's opportunity. There's infinite. Every human you see, there's opportunity, right? But people have to learn how to like take the talent and learn how to market the talent, right? Because God gives us all different things. Some people, like Kaylin Poland, God gave her a gift to be able to help women lose weight, right? But it wasn't until she learned how to market that it was actually now the opportunity is huge. They've got, I don't know, 100 employees in their company, millions of women they've served across the world. It was like taking your God-given talent, learning how to make it rain, plugging those two things together. Now, unlimited opportunities. And so I think a lot of times it's like we're given, and that's why I think, like why I'm so loud about my mission, why I try to share it so much, because like, man, I believe that God's given everybody a calling, right? It says in scriptures, many are called, but few are chosen. Like everybody's called. Everybody gets a calling. Everybody gets that tap on the shoulder. Everyone gets the opportunity. Doesn't matter where you're born, like everyone gets the opportunity. You're called. Most people don't do it, or they don't know how to do it because they have this talent, this hobby, this thing. It's like, and then what happens? It's the date. They hide, or they search. And if you search, you find the answer, and then it's like, oh my gosh, like now I can take this thing and change the world.
Do you think everybody has that talent though? Like, do you, I obviously there's only one Russell Brunson, but like, I have discussions with my mom a lot, right? Like I have a great relationship with my mom, and my mom always tells me, she's like, Josh, not everybody's you. Mm-hmm. And like, not everybody thinks like you. Not everybody has to drive like you. Not everybody has the confidence like you. Not everybody has and I'm like, you don't have to. Like you can do the same things just like in your own way, right? But like,
and everyone's got a different like view of success too.
Right.
Like when my first mentors taught me that, like when I launched my first mastermind group, he pulled me aside. He's like, your mastermind group's going to fail if you try to put your version of success on all those people. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, it was funny because he was in the room. He's like, I can't say names because he has to know something. He's like, you see that guy right here? Do you know why he's in the room? I'm like, why? He's like, he wants to hear himself talk. That's why he's here. And if I try to like force him to do something, he's not going to do it. That guy right there, he's here because he wants to hang out with the group and get network with people. And he's like, you're here because you want to steal everybody's ideas, right? He's like, and so if you try to launch a mastermind, like your goal is to build $100 million company, you try to put your values on the people, you're going to make them all fail. And that was like this big aha for me. It's like, everyone's got a different vision of success. So maybe your brother or someone or your sister or like a family member may not think like you or be like you, but it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't mean they have to change a million people's lives to change the world. Like, it could be their mom and they could be the best mom in the world and they change their kid's life. Like, that's a calling.
And that's what I want. And that's what I want you to touch on. Like, I want you to expand upon that, because I feel like, man, I hear so many arguments. I'm trying to figure out like which one fits best here. It's like, but like, Josh, we need the plumbers of the world.
Yeah.
Right. Like, we need the people that'll come in and vacuum the carpet. Like, we need the people that'll just do the mediocre tasks and that are not important, and that'll just kind of do those in and out and in and out. And like, yeah, that like what, like, because like, I feel like, how do I say this? I believe that a majority of the people in this world are not living up to their true potential, right? Like an massive amount of, or like overwhelming majority
I don't think anyone is, to be honest. I don't think I am.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't think so. Yes, but yeah, 100%.
But you're living far more potential like the average person is, right? And how I look at it is, I go like, hey, listen, like, not everybody can do what you do or what I do or like whatever, but like, okay, how do I bring this around, make it more clear? I'm going to use it from a political aspect of things, because I think that's something that we can all understand. Hey, poor people, victim mentality people. Ooh, that's a controversial thing. But like, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. But like, victim mentality people, or like poor people, like things that like they don't think like that, or maybe they didn't have as good as schooling, or like maybe they didn't have as good of like education, like whatever. Like, they don't have the same understanding that like you do, right? So like, shouldn't we help them see that like they can go and achieve more, or like, should they, like, is their version of success? What am I trying to ask?
The answer is yes, we should be. And that's what we're doing, right? Like, I heard someone before, they're like, well, Russell, you have a $50,000 or $100,000 mastermind group. Like, I can't afford that. It's not fair. I'm like, yeah, but like, I also do a podcast 2 to 3 times a week, every single week for like 6 years. I've written 3 books you can get for $10, or you can get them for free, or, you know, like there's levels of it. Right. And so like, the thing is like, there's value everywhere. And if you pick it up, it increases, you know, like and you actually apply it. Like, I'm a big believer that God gives all of us stewardship over things, right? Like, he'll give you an idea, or give me an idea, give anybody an idea, or desire. Like, here's some desire for you. You look at these kids who are struggling, but they get desire to play basketball, and then they become the Michael Jordans or whoever, like the people, right? Because God gives them desire, or they give them ideas or talents. Like, I'm a big believer that, like, in my business life, as I've been doing this journey now for 18 plus years, is that I got ideas, and a lot of ideas I didn't do anything with, right? But some of them I got the idea, and I'm not naive enough to think like, oh, I came up with this great idea. Like, these are blessings from God, right? They're like, he's like, here's an idea. Let's see if you're going to be a good steward with it. I get the idea. And if I do something with it, he's like, oh my gosh, Russell's a good steward of ideas. Let me give you another idea. And if I don't do something with it, he's like, all right, let me give somebody else. Right. Like all this stuff's happening. They would have happened whether I was like, somebody would have taken it, but I was a good steward of the thing. And so I got blessed with another one and another one and another one. And I think that's a big part of it. I think if people like, I don't think that God, I mean, I do think that he puts us all in different spots to start with.
Okay. That's 100%. A fascinating concept.
He's giving us ideas or desire, things like that. And he's watching, you're gonna be a good steward with it. If you are, I'll give you more. And if you are, I'm gonna give you more. So that people can go from the worst of the worst and become the best in the world. And people can start the best in the world and be horrible. Because what do you do with the things you're getting stewardship over?
So what you're saying here, which is actually a fascinating concept, is that like, I'm going to use the idea for ClickFunnels, for example. Like the idea for ClickFunnels wasn't yours per se, right?
You know, people were trying to build a funnel software when we built ClickFunnels?
I'm sure a lot.
All my friends were. Everybody was.
So you have this idea that is essentially open for anybody. Like anybody could go and take advantage of this idea. You're saying like God put this idea in your head, and he probably put this idea in 100 people's heads or 500, 10,000 people's heads or whatever. But you're like, but I was the one that answered the calling to be like, okay, I'm actually going to take this idea and do something with it. And so because of that, it's not that you took it away from anybody else. Like anybody could have done it. You're just the one that actually went out and just chose to go out and do it and bring it to reality.
Yep. 100%.
Okay.
I wish somebody shared with me, and I haven't read the book. There's a book that tells the story of it was an author who like had an idea for a book, sat down, started writing it, and someone's gonna know it. It's a famous book. People would know this. I guarantee someone on the chat knows this.
Somebody comment below when you hear it. What it is.
The author's like writing the book and then stops, like, oh, runs out of time, forgets about it. And then like 6 years later, this new book comes out. It becomes the New York Times bestselling book, buys the book, starts reading. It's like, this is the book that I was supposed to write. And it was like, oh my gosh, I didn't take stewardship of the idea. I stopped. And so God gave somebody else. It's like, it's the same book, right? It's just I didn't finish it. And so I 100% believe that. And I think it could be an idea, it could be desire, it could be a million things. We all have these different gifts of the Spirit, right? That are given to us, and they sit back and watch. So let's see what you're gonna do with it.
I feel like that could give a lot of people permission to go out and do stuff too, right there. Like that viewpoint. Cause like one of the things that I struggled with early on, which to a certain extent, I think I still struggle with a little bit, not nearly what I used to, is like why me? Like not in a bad way of like, oh man, but why do I get these cool opportunities? Like, you know what I mean? Like I live a pretty great life. Like, you know what I'm saying? And I'm like, why do I get to have this conversation and not somebody else? Like, why am I the first person that gets to sit down with Russell Brunson and talk anything related to politics ever? Right? Like, but it's like that concept of simply because I chose to go do it. Like I chose to be the person that was capable of like having this conversation, right? And it became that person. And I think that because of that, like what you just said right there is like could give people permission. Like you're not taking away from anybody else. And like, you're not inherently special. I mean, you are in your own way, but like, you're not the only person that could have built ClickFunnels.
I'm shockingly average. You ask my wife, ask my parents, like Russell is shockingly average.
And you're actually super awkward to meet for the first time. Yeah, you know, the first time I met, do you remember the first time I was like dead broke? I couldn't afford to go to that conference. Like if I wanted to, but because we were doing his Instagram stuff, like he gave us like tickets, and we saw you like get off stage, and we're like, dude, I bet you like run right now. We could like meet Russell. And so like we run downstairs, and sure enough, there you are, like coming down. And I walk up to him like, Russell, oh my gosh, like huge fan, blah, blah. And you're like, hey, thanks. And we're like, oh, okay. And we're like, can we get a picture? You're like, yeah, I guess. And so like I go, and like normally like when you take a picture, you know, you come up. Normally when you go and like take a picture, like you put your arm around him and things like that. Like you just literally just stood there. right? And like just like that, I'm like, oh, okay, I guess we're not doing that. And so there's like this picture of me in like this picture. I'll find it. I'll box it to you. But it's like we're sitting there. And I'm like, okay, this is this. So guys, Russell is
shockingly average.
Shockingly average, apparently. Like back to the conversation, I remember like what I was trying to ask. So like that was the very first time I met you. I was like, oh man, I can be a millionaire too.
Because that's one thing before I just want to like when I got started this whole business, it was me, and then I hired two of my buddies to come work for me because like they were the only people that cared what I was talking about.
Yeah.
And we were all working on this business. And I remember one of my buddies pulled me aside one day and said, "You know the difference between me, between us two and you?" I said, "No." He said, "The only difference is you're in momentum. You're moving forward. So these opportunities keep coming to you because you're moving. He's like, we're sitting back here doing the thing, but there's no opportunities coming to us because we're not moving. I think we need to understand when you're moving and forward, like people are like, oh, you're lucky you came with ClickFunnels. I'm like, do you know how many funnels I launched before ClickFunnels? Over 150. This is not 150 like create funnel in ClickFunnels. Like, oh, that's a funnel. It was me coming with an idea, hiring a designer, writing a sales letter, putting the product together, putting the pages in front page, uploading them through FTP, getting a shopping cart, connecting them 150 times. Took us 3 months on average to each one. Okay, 150 times before we came up with ClickFunnels. Like I was just moving forward over and over again while everyone else is sitting around waiting. Like motion is the key.
Yeah.
The opportunities come. This is what I'm talking about being a good steward. Like God gave me an idea for ZipRander. Do you remember ZipRander? Mm-hmm. No one does. But that was the first idea. And I was like, oh my gosh, ZipRander. And I found a guy in Romania, I paid him $20 to build the software. I got a header design and a headline and a thing, and I launched it and I made like $400. And then next idea was like this thing called Article Spider. You remember the Article Spider? No one does. I paid someone that a couple of bucks that did that. I launched, I made $1,700. And I was like, oh my gosh, Foreign Fortunes was number 3. And then the next and the next. And I could show you guys, I did this. I wrote them all that. I went back to the Wayback Machine. I found all of them. Thing after thing after thing after thing. Idea after idea. Took like the ideas pop in there. I executed them, tried. And each one got better and better and better and better. And eventually God's like, all right, you're capable. Like you're a good steward. Here's ClickFunnels. Go with it. But if you were to give me that initially, I don't know what to do. It's the momentum, it's the motion that makes you worthy of the calling. And if you're not in momentum, if you're not moving forward, you're never gonna get the calling. Many are called, but few are chosen. They're not momentum, they're not moving forward.
And like you can choose momentum at any stage of life.
Yeah.
Like no matter how rich or poor, where you are, like anything like that.
Yeah.
Like you just got to choose to go through and do that. Okay, I want to circle back to one quick thing and then we can move on. Okay. So the question I was trying to ask was like when you were like, hey, there's the technician or there's the plumber, there's this or there's that, or then there's the person that comes in and makes it rain, right? Like there's only a few people in an organization that like make it rain, right? Like you in ClickFunnels, like you make it rain. Like you're the one that like brings it in and I'm sure there's other people like to a certain extent, but like you are that person. And there's probably you probably have 100, 200 people on the support team that don't actually make the company any money, but they do play a critical role in the sense that like the company couldn't function without them, right? And so like, to those people there, how does somebody who like 2-part question. 1, can you live your best life in a position like that? Like, can you be most alive and fulfilled and like live a great life doing something average like that? And number 2, like, does that person need to go learn how to make it rain? Like, does everybody need to be an entrepreneur? Does everybody need to be like, you are so fascinating. You got this whole community of funnel hackers and like, we're going to go out and change the world. And like, we think differently. We do it differently. We do all this stuff. Like, would it be good if the whole world thought that way? Or like, do we need people that don't think that way?
There's a time in life where I thought everyone should think that way. I don't think so now. I think some people, like, I have family members who love what they do and they're obsessed with the art. Like the art is what they do. Like some people, like I've had good masseuses and bad masseuses. Some masseuses, like that is their art. You can tell you're just like, oh my gosh, like they're the best at their craft. And I think that's okay. I think if it brings fulfillment, like that's more important. But if people aren't fulfilled, that's the second question. Is like, well, if you're not fulfilled, then why? Like, and I think one of the most powerful things, Myron Golden taught this Funnel Hacking Live, and he taught it to Comical a couple of times. He has this thing called the 4 levels of value. And it's so fascinating because
that's such a good,
yeah, it's so good. The first level of value, for those who haven't heard this before, is and it talks about, and I'm going to not do it justice, like Myron's the man. One of the greatest speakers of all time.
Go YouTube. Actually, I don't even know. Is it on YouTube?
It's on my, anyway, yes. But so bottom level is people work with their hands, right? And this is the hardest work. Like someone building a building, the person's like actually building the building or typing, doing support, or like whatever the thing is, like they're working with their hands. Like that's the lowest level of value, right? Like the most you make when you're working hands is maybe 50, 60, $70,000. You're like, but you're tapped out. You can't get higher than that. Now, excuse me, if that's your calling and you're good at it and you love it, like go all in, like become the best in the world at that thing. And that's totally cool. But but like you cap out on salary. You can't make more money at a certain point because that's what the value of that tier value. The next tier value, then if you move up one tier, is management, right? Someone who can manage all of the workers, right? And there's people who like, one of the big mistakes we made inside of ClickFunnels, we took the people inside of our team who were the best workers, and we upgraded them into management. And they were horrible managers. They're amazing workers, moved into management, and managing people, they weren't managers. Like this is a different mindset. And so it's like they can go learn that, but that's not where they were. That's not where they were gifted, right? And a lot of times it was irreparable. We couldn't move them back down because in their mind, like, oh, I'm a manager now. It's like, no. I think one of the things we learned is like someone can work be a worker and make more money than the manager, right? Because sometimes their skill set, like at programmers and developers, like getting an amazing programmer to code something is a lot of times worth more than the manager who's managing that person. But in most businesses, most organizations, management's next tier, right? Because you make more money as a manager because you're managing a lot of workers as opposed to one. Then you go up the next tier value, and it's like the communicators, right? People learn how to talk and to sell. Like that's the next thing. You make more selling than you managing, and you typically make more managing than you do actually doing the thing. And not everyone's going to be great salespeople. Like I think it's a teachable skill. I think you may have seen my early videos. Like if anyone thinks this is a gift that I was born with, it is not. It is something that's been developed.
Guys, you should go look at Russell's old videos. They are so embarrassing.
They are the worst ever. Yeah, when I was your age, I would not have been able to do this. Like it's crazy. And so that tier is the communicators, and the top tier are the visionaries, like imagining, like you're using your brain to make money. So you're using your brain, your mouth, your management skills, or your hands. Like those are the 4 tiers of value. And so I think wherever you fit in there, it's like, that's cool. Like we need people, all the tiers, but like I did a podcast about this the other day. I'm like, if you're going to be, whatever you're going to be at, like, don't just be a person doing it, become the best in the world. Like we were in Oak at Tony's event, and we were in a hotel, and it was kind of weird because there's a spa, so right, all excited to get massages, but it's also COVID right now. So like the masseuses have masks on, they have plastic gloves. It was like, it was weird. And I got my very first massage. They paid for some massage, 2 massages. So I was like, it'll be fun. First massage was so bad. I was like, I never want to get a massage again ever. Like it was so bad. And I'm sitting there on the table. It was only an hour-long massage. By the time it was done, I was like, I want to get out of here. Like this is just weird and horrible. I did not enjoy it. And I'm a massage person.
Yeah, I love massages. Yeah.
And I was like, the point, like, I'd never want a massage again. But they'd already booked us for the next day for the second one. And I was annoyed. I went to the second one. And same thing, she's got plastic gloves on, like we have to do, in the mask. And it's kind of like, oh, I don't even want to be here. And then she puts her hands on me, and it was just like, it was art. Like it was different. And I was like, both of them are doing the same job, right? But somebody's like, I want to be the best in the world versus like, oh, I'm just doing the thing. And you see that in every area of life. You look at chiropractors. There's chiropractors that are good, and there's ones that are great. Doctors, like dentists, business, like I'm more of like wherever you're at, like don't just be mediocre, like become the best in the world there. That's more important to me than, if you're gonna be a plumber, be the plumber who you walk in. Like we've had our house, so many plumbers come in. We had some that come in, they fix the leak, and then something else breaks, and they go, and other guys come in and they check everything, making sure it's perfect. It's like, I would rather, like, I want that person, I want the artist, I want the person who, like, this is their art, not just like, oh, best job I could find. Like,
yeah.
Anyway.
All right. So now I'm about to ask you a question, and I understand this is totally like, just like your opinion on it. There's, nothing, but maybe you have something to base it on. So like the person that is at those lower levels of value, right? The average worker that's out there that's doing their thing, especially in today's super soft victim mentality America that wants to vote for free stuff, makes me so mad. Anyway, so like the average person like that's out there looks up at people that make a lot of money, and like kind of the general consensus, I think, or the way that America / the world is going is like rich people are bad, right? Like oh, you're so greedy, man. Like you got all this money, and like you're not giving any to me, and like you get to go sit in your massive house and your cars, and you can do whatever you want. And so like, even if they are doing what they are called to do, like they'll look up to a millionaire or a billionaire, like someone that has like all this stuff, and they'll look at it as bad. Like that shouldn't happen. Like, how do you create a society? And this is why, like, I know this is big picture, like type stuff, but like, how do you create a society that allows people to like be okay with being the best version of themselves, like where they're at, without like looking at you and being like, you're bad. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, it's not going to happen in our lifetime. It's not going to happen, my belief, till Christ comes again. And when he does, it'll be a perfect, things will be great. But until then, it's not going to happen because humans are humans, right?
You mean Donald Trump's not going to fix everything?
Oh, if he does, that'd be amazing. But I'm not holding my breath. But I would say more so just for anyone who feels that way. Like I would look at that more. And I did a podcast about this. Like, if you're not someone who celebrates other people's successes, everybody, I don't care if you hate the person, if you're a big fan or you're not a big fan, like if you don't celebrate their success, then you are going to struggle to ever be successful because you're going to be so scared of other people not celebrating your success. Like I remember, I am not a huge Gary Vee fan. You know this.
Yeah.
For reasons I'll talk about in my next book. But
so when I tweet this out on Twitter, Gary, when you're following me, shout out.
But
by the way, the Patriots won the Super Bowl and the Jets. Just throw that out there. All right, continue.
No,
I just guaranteed he'd never come on my
podcast. I do like Gary. We had anyway the thing, but whatever. Yeah. He doesn't remember it, I'm sure. But anyway, he got the shoe deal with whatever
Adidas,
the shoes.
Or Adidas.
And he's on the market. And like for a half a second, I was like, that sucks. And then I was like, he's in our industry and he got a shoe deal. And I ran to my computer. The case was, I bought the shoes. I got them here. And I was like, I did a podcast, like celebrating the fact that someone in our community got a shoe deal and all these things. And a bunch of people that I know are like, I thought like, you're not a big Gary fan. I'm like, I'm not, but like, that's a huge success. Like we should celebrate success, because if you don't, then what's going to automatically happen in your head, if you're not celebrating people's successes, you have the subconscious fear that someone's not going to do yours. And so you're going to stifle yourself from being successful. So I try, when anybody around me is having success, whether I like them or I don't like them, like I always am like, oh my gosh, I'm going to try to celebrate it. And then by doing that, like it changes your brain to the spot where you're okay having success because you're assuming everyone's going to celebrate like you, and they're not going to. But I don't know, it's different. Subconsciously, you are not celebrating other people's successes. It'll stifle you from ever having your own. And so I think that's a big part of it. Like if that's where you're at right now, like it's something you got to change. And when you start making that little shift and start celebrating people's successes above you, it's freeing. It's amazing, because then it's all of a sudden you're like unlocking yourself. Like I can succeed because they did, and people are going to celebrate me. And like it shifts those like psychological things that you do, and it changed everything. It's weird.
Do you think you're not political, like hardly at all? Like, do you even pay attention?
No, no, not too much.
Like,
I was like, hey, so those who read the book, Hank Reardon, and this is part of his demise, is he doesn't pay attention to it at all.
Anything.
So as I'm reading the book, I'm like, Hank Reardon doesn't pay attention. I don't pay attention. Like, and real quick, could we shout out for these shirts again? You guys seen them? By the way, how many of you guys would like one of these shirts?
Ooh, let's make them comment for this first.
Okay.
Guys, how many of you want a shirt? Yes or no? Comment yes or no down below.
So this is the Reardon Steel one. And this is the Who's John Galt one.
Pretty dope. I'm not gonna lie though, like that one's pretty dope, but this one wins for one reason. Like that.
The quote is cool.
Like,
we could put that quote on this one too and make it silver.
Ooh.
Okay, this is my selfish pitch. Can I do?
Okay, yeah. Hey guys, can Russell do a pitch real quick?
You guys okay if I sell something?
Can he sell something to you? Keep in mind, I make no money off this. I don't even know what he's doing.
I don't know if I make any money. Okay, no, we have a little fun site we created just because it'd be fun, called t-shirtsmackdown.com, where we have 2 shirts and then people vote with their wallets on which shirt they want better. So if you guys want these shirts, you can actually buy whichever one is your favorite, or both. If you like them both, you just gotta go to t-shirtsmackdown.com, and they're up there right now. And guess who's the models on T-Shirt Smackdown? I assume, are we the models?
www.t-shirtsmackdown.com.
Yeah. This is an idea I had 8 years ago that we just like put together really quick.
Yeah. Post the comments to some destination. Oh, there it is, right there.
There it is, yeah.
Boom. I'm gonna do it one more time. Can you sell something? Yeah. All right. Somebody like
give me your permission.
Somebody.
My favorite.
Somebody keep posting that. I want to make sure.
And you go to t-shirtsmackdown.com. Yeah, you can get 1 or 2.
Oh my gosh! Look at that thing. Your team's amazing, dude. They put it together like that fast.
We've already sold 27 of mine in 13 years. So mine is winning. So if you think Who's John Galt score, Ruin still.
Oh man, guys,
vote with your wallets.
Go buy mine. Like actually,
get both, because they're actually cool. And if you want, we'll put a quote on the back of this one.
Should we put a quote on the back of this shirt?
What do you think? If you vote for this one, would you want the back? Would you want the quote on the back?
Yeah. Would you want the quote? Comment quote on back down below.
I'll read the quote again. It says, this is from the Atlas Shrugged book. It says, I started my life with a single absolute, that the world was mine to shape in the image of my highest values and never to be given up to lesser standard, no matter how long or hard the struggle. Ooh, that is so good.
It's so good. I think we need to do that one. Or we could put, not Reardon. I was going to say it was John Galt. You could put John Galt. I swear that I'll never live for another. Yeah.
There you go.
This one. We could do this one on the back of this one too. It says, I pledge by my life and my love of it that I will never live for the sake of another man, nor ask another man to live for mine. He put that at the top. Dude. Okay, let's geek out on the book here for a second.
Okay.
the audible door, or like the password that was audible. When I read that, I was like, yes. That's like a brilliant mind at work, right? Yeah. It's like you have to say it. Good. And the part that I thought was interesting was it wasn't just the words. He's like, and it's programmed to where it will not open unless like the person that is saying it like is actually like saying it with conviction, or like something to that effect. Like they actually have to like mean it.
You
right. You can't just be like, blah, 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 okay, cool, I'm in. Like
now you guys want to read the book so bad.
Yeah, you want to, okay. All right. We'll come back to the T-shirt Smackdown. Comment down below. Let us know. And let us know, guys. Let us know down in the comments. And if you're listening on audio, you can like go leave a rating and review and like leave us in the comments. But like if you're listening, YouTube, Facebook, wherever, like comment down below where the best part of your favorite part of the conversation was so far. I think that'd be super cool. Okay, let's get out of the book for a second here.
I'm gonna steal one of your waters. I found 2 waters. You've got like half of one. I'm stealing your third.
Well, to be fair, I drank like 3 bottles at your house because your wife kept handing me that alkaline water, like whatever it was.
Good stuff.
Like I finished one, just like refill it. She's like, one more. I'm like, yeah, sure. One more. I'm like, all right, that was good. Okay, I want to know, and I actually have a lot of questions about the book, but I want to know like what was like your favorite scene in the book?
Oh, so many good scenes. My favorite scene in the book. So, it's kind of like the crescendo of the whole book. Because the whole book is asking, who's John Galt? Who's John Galt?
Okay, hold on. Sorry. Dave is sitting here in the background. Have you read the book, Dave? Okay, so I'm just making sure that you're not just sitting over here. Like
I got back, I was freaking out. And Dave's like, I have to read it too.
Yeah.
Forever.
Right. Forever. Well, because it's so freaking long.
I was like, I need to talk to somebody. Dave, go read this. I'll see you in 6 months.
There you go. Well, it's funny. We went to Cash Flow Tactics event and they had like the rise up. Yeah. And like did you see their shirts?
Yeah.
Oh, freaking great. Like with the rise up.
Can I tell everybody about what I'm creating?
Sure.
Am I allowed to talk about it or not? Okay.
Wait, is it your? Yeah.
Okay.
Tell him.
Okay. If you guys want this, I need like freaking out comments like, well,
everybody out. Say, tell us.
Tell me.
Yeah. Just like 100 million times down below. This is freaking dope.
Okay. So I have, remember I told you I go all in on things? Like that's why I don't gamble, because I'd be broke within an hour. Or
I have a hint.
Okay. All right. So this is part of it. So I get back, finish reading the book. I'm like, I need an Atlas statue. And so I buy this one. They show up. I'm like, they're so tiny. So I found this big one that's like, it's a full-size one. And I was begging Colette, like, can we get this Atlas statue? I'm going to put it in the front yard. She's like, no. And I was like, well, I can see. I was like, whoa, crap. And so I'm trying to figure things out. And I'm doing a whole bunch of stuff. And then I'll give you the shorter version because the long version has a lot of details. But anyway, finally I was like, well, I should build one. So I'm looking in Times Square. Excuse me, not Times Square, Rockefeller Center. There's a big, the Atlas statue, which is, anyway, the big Atlas statue, which is the traditional one where he's holding the weight of the world on his shoulders, right? And I'm looking at that, and all of a sudden I remember one of my best friends in high school, his little brother is a sculptor, like one of the best sculptors on the planet. I hadn't talked to him like 15, 16 years. So I messaged him and I was like, dude, do you still sculpt? He's like, yeah. I'm like, can you sculpt a statue of Atlas for me? And he's like, why do you want an Atlas? So I kind of tell him, and then he messaged back. He's like, dude, he's like, he starts freaking out, and I'm like, why are you so excited? He said, basically in 2004, he got hired by these guys to build, to do a 3 statue thing, where one was a statue of Atlas holding the weight of the world. The second was him standing, shrugging. And the third was the world on the ground and him walking away. He got commissioned to do this. And because of reasons, I don't know the details, but he ended up not being able to do it. Fast forward now, 16 years later, I messaged him asking for an Atlas statue. And he's like, dude, there's been no one on this planet who spent more time studying Atlas than me. And he's like, I've read the book. I've worked on this project. He's like, how about we build these 3 statues? We're going to be like 16 years ago. We never got to do. So I said, yes. And so we're building them. There's 3 8-foot atlases holding a 6-foot globe. And next door to this, I'm building this huge library. And in the middle, it's going to be this 3 statues. And the whole front of that building will be glass. And you'll be able to drive up and just see the 3 statues. It's going to be so cool.
See, this is what you get to do when you are an entrepreneur and a producer and you make all this money. Then you get to go do this and you get to like.
And then what's cool is that we're going to make mini ones. So if you guys want, you can get like after the sculpting's done, you can buy one to put in your own library and have your own.
And because he's an entrepreneur, you have to be able to buy something.
I got to pay for it. It's not cheap. So I'm going to have you guys help me with that by buying your own mini version.
Yeah. So Russell's bribing you into paying for his library.
It's going to be amazing.
To be fair, though, you get to own a piece of something that's really freaking.
It's really cool. Yeah,
it's gonna be super cool. Okay,
I don't know how that came up, but there's my.
I don't know.
I digress.
We'll blame Dave. He's over there. We'll just blame him. Okay.
My favorite part of the book.
Back to back. Favorite part of the book.
Okay, favorite part of the book. So the whole book's linked to who's John Galt. We kind of introduced him a little bit when Dagny meets him, and then she leaves and goes back to the real world. And all of a sudden, there's this part where the looters and the government are trying to like do this broadcast, and all of a sudden the broadcast is interrupted, and they're trying to figure out how to fix it, but all the people who would fix it have been taken. Like they're like
because all the great minds of society are gone.
They're gone, and all of a sudden, like over the loudspeaker comes John Galt. And he starts the speech, and the speech I think is 80 pages in the book.
It's like
4 hours.
It's like
it's 4 hours on the audiobook. 4 hours. This is why you don't watch the movie, by the way, because it's less than 30 seconds in the movie.
Like how do you take a 4 hours? Like, oh, it's such a good.
Anyway, he gets on his microphone, broadcasting to the entire world. Nobody can cut him off, and he gives this speech about big
everything, the whole book.
I'm just like freaking out. Like the setup was so crazy. All of a sudden it happens. I was like, ah. And anyway, that was my.
And he ends with this.
Yeah.
And he goes, and I'll say it like one last time. I pledge my life and my love of it that I will never live for the sake of another man, nor ask another man to live for mine.
Anyway, that was my favorite part.
The 80-page, 4 hour long version of it. Okay.
Oh yeah, so good.
Okay, I like that. My favorite part of the book. I read this, and I was like, so I like play my life out and like act like I'm in a movie, right? Sometimes I'm like, do this. So do you remember at the wedding?
Oh, Francisco speech.
Dude.
Oh, yes. So that might have been better.
That's the best part. I can tell with that chapter, and I'm like, I promised Leah I would be done after this chapter. And like, it ends, and I'm like, I remember.
Yeah, I do think. So the John Galt had a better build up, and then like I didn't know it was coming. Like, and there's wedding thing, everything, and then all of a sudden starts happening. I was like,
out of freaking nowhere.
Yeah. So Francone just
Francisco
D'Anconia.
D'Anconia.
He gives a speech that was like, I wasn't expecting it, so I think it was less build up, but it was amazing. Yeah, the John Galt build up was like, this is like I was waiting to see that in movie because I was like, it'd be amazing. Then it's like, come on. Anyway, yeah, those are the two best parts.
Yeah. So at that wedding, like I'm reading this and I'm like, that was when, like, it was like that moment I was like, okay, she finally like made it all like, and that was relatively early on in the book. Yeah. I was like, oh, if the book follows anything like this is going to be such a good book, right? Because like he gets done with that and like you're just, it's like something you'd want to like watch out in real life, and you're like, somebody thought this up and like wrote it down. You're just like, yeah,
so good,
yeah. That was so good. That was hands down the favorite.
I want to read the book again. I wish it wasn't 1,200 pages because like I want to go back and experience it, but it's so big.
Okay, have you read the Cliff Notes version of the book?
No.
Okay,
maybe so that's what I got to do.
Yeah, so there's I think there's the Cliff Notes, like the one that you buy. I think it's like a 4-hour audiobook. I haven't listened to that one, but if you just go to like cliffnotes.com and like read the book, you can basically get a summary of the whole book in like 30 to 45 minutes. I read it.
It's still worth reading though, you guys.
100%. 100%
worth it.
But, and actually that's the reason I bring it up, because like, I know it's 1,200 pages, but like you don't, like if you just read the Cliff Notes, you're like, oh, okay, like cool storyline, but like you miss the effect, like the oomph of it all.
One of the things that I thought was fascinating, and this is because like I'm working on my next book, which is like, it's not a how-to book, so I'm learning how to write differently. So I've been reading. You
want to tell us all about it?
I'm really proud of it. I'm excited for it. But one thing was interesting, like if you look at how Ayn Rand did the dialogue in the book, she did all the dialogue where just one person speaking. So it's fascinating every time. If you notice that, like when her partner was in the cafeteria with some guy we didn't know, you only hear his words, you never hear the other side.
Oh, that's so true.
They did most of her dialogues, but just you heard the one person talking, and you could get the gist of the conversation by reading one side, but they'd never had the other side. And I'd never seen someone write that way before. And there's a lot of cool things like that where it's just like people, and like, again, I've written 3 books now, but like I wrote books with Google Docs, with editors and people. Like imagine writing a book in the 50s with a typewriter. I think how much pre-forethought has to go to something like this.
Yeah,
like,
that's wild.
Like it is insane to think that, yeah. So like I have so much respect for people who wrote then, and like, especially I'm trying to learn how to write as a story as opposed to how to, and it's like the art of it is just, it's fascinating. And anyway, as a book, it's just like, it's worth reading just like to see how she wrote it. It's fascinating as well.
What was your like biggest, actually, I want to go down that rabbit hole a little bit further. Yeah. So like writing, and is your next book fiction or not?
No, it's just, the next book is, I bought bootstrap.com. So next book's Bootstrap, and it's the ClickFunnels story. But it's not like the how-to, it's telling the story as the story, which is gonna be cool. That's
gonna be so good.
So like, the first thing we're doing is all the core people who've been part of the ClickFunnels story, we're flying them out and interviewing them for, I've been mapping out the entire timeline of events as close as I can remember, and interviewing all the pieces from their point of view, trying to get that from like 50 different people, and then take all that stuff, sync the timelines up, and write the book as a story. Anyway, so it's a different writing style I've never done before.
That's interesting.
Because Oh yeah, Dave wants to tell you the cool part. So I'm also like been re-geeking out on like Hero with 1,000 Faces and the Hero's Two Journeys and like all that stuff. So I want to make sure. Well, someday I want to try to sell it to Hollywood or something. So who knows? I don't have the end of the story yet, but so I'm just
which is, by the way, super fascinating
Mhm.
because like the concept of like going for a target and then like going towards it, like you don't know the end, and now you're just like, it's so cool.
And so what's cool about it is like
Russell's so much fun to watch.
so like I'm writing. So I've been geeking out on the Hero's Journey. So I'm trying to sync the timeline of the ClickFunnels startup story to the timeline of the Hero with 1,000 Faces, like to all the core things to see if I can get it to fit inside that framework, which I think we'll be able to do. That way, it's going to be amazing. And then what I'm trying to do in my new office is I'm going to build the room where it's like a timeline. So the entire room wraps in a huge chalkboard with like a timeline that goes around that has like the dates and the hero's journey stuff, right? And then like and then like writing in each core thing on the wall, and then you know like they do in the spy movies where you have like the string that goes up and you have the pieces of paper.
Yeah.
So like as I'm writing the book, I want to have the whole thing timed out in a square room, and so you see it all, and they can see all the pieces how they all fit together, and then when the book's done, then that'll be the wallpaper on the room.
Oh my gosh.
Cool?
Okay. All right.
Anyway,
so here's a great idea. So you do that up until like a certain point, like this is modern day. And then there's like an end of the wall. And then like from that point to there, that's when you're writing. When you get to the end of the wall, you have to sell everything and go into hiding and become John Galt.
Yeah.
Like that
book's done.
There we go. That's fascinating.
Anyway, but it gets right to write a story that's way different. It's not like all my other books are how-to books. So it's like they're written differently. And so it's just been fun.
Which by the way is why I was like, when I like first got into entrepreneurship, I was like, I don't know why anybody would write a book that's not like that. Like, I'm like, what? Why would anybody write a book like this? This is so lame. And now I'm like reading it and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so cool.
Yeah, I have a ton of respect. Like the books I'm reading right now, like I just finished Shoe Dog, which is like the story of
that's
Nike,
a great book.
American Kingpin, which is like the story of the Silk Road and the Dark Web. My favorite stories I've ever read. I read it twice already. And the writer is probably the best writers I've ever. I read it and I was so depressed. I was like, I'll never write as good as him. I tried to hire him to write my book for me, and he's too busy. I will give you a blank check. Just write this book. You're so much better than I could ever dream of. So I had to go learn how to do it.
What was the most fascinating thing about Atlas Shrugged to you? Like if any, like the way it was written or the concepts or the characters, like anything, what was the overall, like the most fascinating part for you?
Man, character development is so cool. I think the coolest thing for me, was like each, and I would love to see some diagrams because I don't know it, but like each of the characters played, like they're a character, but they played a role that is like that's magnified in society as like a group almost, right? Like
that's actually super true.
And Dagny, and then like
James Taggart.
Taggart's wife.
Yeah,
and like all the people, they were like they were humans, but they were a personification of like a segment of society, which was really cool. And so it's like seeing that where you're just like, you're getting this like this micro version, this macro problem. That was cool because like I don't study politics. I'm not deep into it. So I don't know all these things. And like you hear this character and you hear the story and all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, that represents this group of people and so for me, it was cool because I was able to understand things at a different level. And I'm not the best at this, but I always try to like put myself in other people's shoes. I try to understand like that's why I'm not super political because it gets so divisive. And I'm like, I see good on both sides. Like I understand, like I can love people on both sides of it. And I think it was so cool for me because I was able to like, you see the pros and the cons of each thing, right? You see the positives and negatives of each belief pattern. Like Hank Reardon, as much as I related to him, there's the good and evil, right? Dagny, there's good and evil. Like all of them have that. And so like, it was just cool because it gave me this perspective that I didn't know of so many different segments of society. It made this really cool tapestry and picture for me.
All right. So now the polar opposite, like what do you think the book lacked in or like didn't communicate well or like left out?
I think it's something we're talking about today. Like I do feel like most of the producers in the book, they didn't have the other side of it, right? Like the social stuff is important. Like helping other people is important. And I get why she didn't. Like I said, the Phil Donahue interview, she's like, people should be social, but they shouldn't do it with the gun. But she never showed that. She didn't show Hank Reardon going and like, oh, this is a cause I care about. Like, let me go and
at all,
you know, and
in any part.
And I think that stuff's important. Like that's why we talk about the political on the left side. Like they're what they're trying to do is good. It's right. Like it's from God. Like they're so good things, right? But there's like but there's ways that people twist it and all sorts of stuff like that. And I wish they would have showed more of that, because I felt like the characters were one-sided, where it's just like, it's like the people that are the looters or the people that are producers. And I feel like there's more blend. I think for all of us, we have blends of those things.
Yeah.
And they did a good job of dissecting. So you can see it,
yeah.
I think we all have all those things. It's like, I want to give, I want to serve, I want to do things, but I also want to produce. Like, I want to do both those things, right? Like, what's the world look like where we do both of those things? And I don't know how to, in my little universe that I've created for myself and my family, like I'm trying to produce. And then we've got OUR, we've got these things. Like, I'm trying to contribute and trying to do my version of what I think is right. Like, all we can do is like what we think is right in our own little world that we create. And so this is my world I've created. I'm trying my best to do it. And I wish that they would have showed some of that side. Because I think that was the part I feel like the characters were missing, just that part of it.
So what's interesting in
Christ, like charity love stuff.
Okay, well, and I'm so glad you brought this up. What I think is interesting is my takeaway from, or like the thing that I felt like the book was lacking the most, is nobody had kids.
Oh, I didn't think about that.
Like, think about this. Like, none of them, like, because one of my questions to you is going to be like, how is having kids? And I kind of asked earlier, like, kind of changed perspective. But I'm like,
interesting.
Nobody had kids. So like, and I don't have kids. I'm not married. I don't have kids. I'm getting married. Yeah. By the way, shout out to my beautiful fiance. All right. But, like for me, like I'm so focused right now. So I grew up in a big family, right? 8 kids. I'm the oldest living. I had one older brother who passed away, but like 6 younger siblings. And so like, for me, I'm like, man, like my whole life changes once there's kids in it. And like, I know that even though I haven't experienced it, because I've seen it. Right. And so for me, and like Leah and I have talked about this, it's like the 20s are for us, the 30s are for kids. Right. Like, and so I'm like, I got to make as much money as I possibly can before then, because and I even told Colette this. I said, if there was one thing that I would sacrifice my career for in order to be able to do, it'd be like to homeschool my kids. Like, I can't fathom sending my kids to public school. Right. That's just me, because I grew up homeschooled or whatnot. But like, as I was going through the book, I'm like, I can relate to all these people, but like they're leaving out like this key component. Like, imagine being Hank Reardon and like living like he did with your 5 kids.
Yeah.
Or do you have?
I'm 5.
Yeah. Okay. I was gonna say 4. I was like, oh my gosh. So like, think about that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I feel like because there's a lot of people I know that have read Atlas Shrugged. They're like, heck yeah, man! Like, it's the greatest book ever. Like, for profit, blah blah blah. And I'm like, yeah, but like, imagine living your life that way with a family.
Yeah.
Like, imagine living your life like that, like with like kids and responsibilities, and like people that you actually like love.
Think about this, because like I think of our timeline, and it comes back to we talk about with greed and contribution, or growth and contribution, right? So most of us, we get born. Well, all of us, we get born, right? Only way to get here, we all born, right? And from like when you're born till you're whatever. For me, I got married at 22. I was 22, right? And so it's like the first 21 years, it's all about you, right? Like, it's selfish, it's growth, it's like whatever, it's you, right? And everyone's very inward focused. And then all of a sudden you meet this beautiful person and you fall in love. You're like, this is amazing. And also what happens is it shifts from you to like us. And like you're giving. And it's cool because like also all your focus is on you, it's on somebody else. But they're focused on you too. And it's like this amazing thing where like, I'm giving, but I'm also getting. It's like this amazing thing, right? It's like this transition that's easing you into kids, because then kids come out and it flips now where it's like the opposite, where like you're just serving 100%, especially at the very beginning with their kids. Like, there's nothing, like I was joking with my kids about this one night when they're like, why are you guys so mean? I'm like, do you realize like we get no value from this? We don't get paid a penny from this. Like, there's nothing in parenting. Like, we kill ourselves, we serve, we don't sleep, we work, we pay money, we get, and that's not true. There's value in it. But like,
I was like, I can just sitting there, imagine Russell telling his kids, we get no value, you do not pay us.
I'm like, I'm killing myself.
To be fair, you do get a tax break.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's just funny because I'm like, and so, but especially in the first board, like they're cute and you get less, but they're in the selfish phase now where like, you're giving 100% and they're not giving back, other than like they giggle and cute. Like, oh, it's so cute. But for the most part, it's like, so you have this like this time where you're selfish and it's like, oh, I'm serving someone else, but they're serving me amazing. Now since like 100% service there. And I think that's a good point. Like Hank Reardon had only done this thing. And then, he never had a chance to like 100% serve somebody else and see what that's like. Cause the value you get as a parent is when you serve 100% of the kids and you see like who they become, and and that's the value. But it doesn't come from like the quick pro quo that you normally get with like, I'm gonna buy this thing or pay for this thing or whatever, right? It's like I'm gonna serve and serve and serve, and then eventually, hopefully, someday they learn to be cool people.
Well, because and that's a super interesting point, and maybe that's why she left the part out of it, because she was like, none of these people would ever have kids.
She didn't have kids, so that's a big, it might have been a part where she'd never seen that. least now that I'm aware, I'm pretty sure
That's crazy. Because like I was, going through it. I'm like, this book I think would mean so much different, or like, so like when I first read it, I don't know, like I said, whenever I first learned about this back in high school, right? Like I read it, I was like, I hated reading. I publicly declared, and this is actually funny. Like when I graduated high school, I bought myself a pickup truck. I stood on the top of the pickup truck and I publicly declared to the world that I would never read another book ever again in life. I hated reading. Right. And so it's funny because now I'm reading 1,200 page books and I've read every one of those books back there. Like it didn't really take on the same effect as like now, like being an entrepreneur, like being someone that, like at one point I had 5 employees. I'm like 26 years old, like trying to, and so like now I'm reading and I'm like, yeah. But if I read it with kids, I feel like that would even like give you like a completely different perspective on like it. How has having kids changed because you're an entrepreneur, like basically from the one, right? Like you never really had a job, right?
I've served tables and I never had a job for more than 3 months. So.
Okay. So yeah. So you're a failure in the normal society, right? You can't hold a job. You get fired forever. But like, how's having kids and like having to balance, because man, like, dude, you're running ClickFunnels is a $1 billion company, right? We're allowed to say that. Like, that's the thing, right? Like roughly, like I'm not off on that. All right.
The value is based on what people pay for. So hopefully someone pays
so
that.
We're going to say $1 billion company. So like, you're running this $1 billion company. You've made hundreds of millions of dollars. You've been paid $1 million an hour from stage before. Which, by the way, big props, congratulations. Like, how has balancing work now with that, like with the kids, like growing up? I feel like now they're at, because your oldest is what, too old, 14, almost 15, right? So like, how has that changed the way that you view your work? Like, do you struggle with that, like the balance?
Yeah, especially now with like COVID stuff happening, kids being homeschooled. But now it's like before it's easy to separate. Like they're going to school, I'm going here. Separation is easy. Now it's harder because it's like they're still home, and it's like, oh, should I be there? Like, it's definitely tough. Man, it's interesting. I have so many entrepreneur friends. I always tease them because it's like who don't have any kids and they're doing amazing things. I'm like, yeah, but like I'm doing this stuff and I got 5 kids and a beautiful wife and I got callings in my church and there's so many things. I think it's just, I think I hired a trainer. Dave knows the safe trainer. I remember when he started working this, he said, the biggest thing you notice when you start working with me is that you'll be shocked what your body can actually endure. I think that most people don't understand what they could actually do. Like, how do you run a company that's big and have a family and have a successful marriage and have these, like, you can do it. Like most people don't because they sedate and like, I don't watch 4 hours of football at night because I have all these other things, right? I don't know. It's just like, if you take away the excuse of sedation, like you can produce so much more than I think people are able to understand. I don't know. So it's interesting. And then it's been such a weird thing too with kids, because I think when you first start having kids, you assume they're all going to be like you, right? Like, oh, they're all going to be entrepreneurs. It's so much fun. And then, I had twins. It was crazy. The twins, our first 2 came out as twins. Now they're, 14, almost 15. It's crazy because I assumed like they'd all be the same as me, or at least same together. And they are so polar opposites, right? Like,
yeah, I didn't even know. I just found out today that they were twins.
Yeah, like
I had no clue. Colette's like, yeah, they're both turning 15. I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah.
What?
They look at each other, act at each other, and like one's more entrepreneurial, one's more like, if you look at like disc profile, we have a DI, we have an SC, like,
oh my god,
introvert, extrovert, like all the things are different. And I always thought, like my kids are gonna be entrepreneurs like me. And now it's like, no, I don't think they have to be. This kind of goes back to talking about earlier, like, with my kids, I'm like, now, like, what do you want to do? And I think some of my kids are very entrepreneurial. A lot of them aren't. I think some of my kids are super smart, hard workers who are going to be amazing at the roles they play in something. They're going to be a huge part of like changing somebody's world, but it's not going to be the front person of it. Right. And so it's been interesting watching that, and fulfilling and hard, and it's all the things wrapped into one. I don't know. It's an interesting experience. You're going to love it. You should start having kids right away.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. But what? Okay, but why though?
You should take some time.
Okay, but how long did you go? How long did you wait?
Let's see. We had our 18-year anniversary. The kids turned 15, so almost 3 years. Yeah,
3 years before. Yeah.
We tried earlier, but we had fertility drugs, stuff like that, and everything. But yeah, so probably 2 years when we started trying.
Yeah, I can't. Kids scare me, dude. Yeah. Man, I'll tell you. But so like, it's interesting because like I grew up with 6 younger siblings. So like I was definitely old enough to remember like the whole diaper phase, and like, and obviously I wasn't the parent with it, but like, and the church that I went to, like the 8 was like average to small amount of kids. Like a lot of them were like 13 kids, 12 kids, 14 kids, whatever. Like I think the smallest in our whole church was 4. Like, and they were the weird ones, right?
You only have 4 kids,
right? And so it's like everywhere we went, that's just like what it was. And so for me, like I had that rebellion phase, if you will, which I don't know if I call it rebellion phase, but like where I was like, I don't want any of this. Like, why would you like, they're expensive and they like suck all the time. And I can't go do this. I'm like, I want to be so filthy rich before I go like having kids. And so, and I like taught Sunday school and like was very involved in like the church growing up and things like that. And so for me, it was like, I want to go build my business, like building on, like doing that is like more fun. The interesting thing about kids, and I told my parents this, I don't remember what it was, but like my parents are not like my parents aren't like super like wealthy or like successful when it comes to business or anything like that. But like I look at my parents as like some of the most successful people that I've ever met in my life because like my mom's favorite, like there's like little things that my mom like tells me over and over and over again. And she's like, one of her favorite lines is, the only thing I need to know in life is like, I just need to know that my children walk in truth. Right. And I'm like, my mom particularly, and my dad too, like both of them, but like I related with my mom because she keeps saying it, is like, my mom's definition of success and like achievement was, do my children walk in truth? Do my children, like that is what was success to her. And like, she's like, you can take, you know, like, yeah, money would have been great, like all these different things, but like that was like kind of this pinnacle of success for her, is like, do my kids like walk in truth? And so as I have gone through my own journey of faith, which has been, I mean, it's been rough at times, right? Yeah. Like I've watched her like struggle with it and like freak out because she's like, I just want, I'm like, but it's not like, that's not her journey to bear, but like it is like at the same time. And so it's always been interesting. Like kids are like this thing where I feel like once I have them, obviously I'm there for the rest of my life, but like, I feel like there's this stress or like there's this new piece of my life that's unlocked that like I've never explored before. I don't know anything about it. Right. And I'm like, afraid isn't the right word, but I'm like pushing that off that is as long as I possibly can, because once it's open, then I never get to close it again. And like that mystery is, it's almost like fun to like look forward to, but at the same time be like, I get to focus on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's interesting. I remember thinking about this a lot, especially the first few years. I was like, this is so much harder than I thought it was going to be. Like flat out, I was just like, I thought it was going to be, you know, whatever, way harder. But I also remember feeling and saying out loud, like, this is so much cooler than I ever dreamt it was going to be. So it was like this double-edged sword where I was like, man, like I didn't realize how tired and like worn out and like all these things, but then like, oh, so much better than I thought. And it's funny because I know a lot of friends are like, well, when do we make money then I'll have kids? I'm like, I don't know. It's different. Like I would just have kids. Like you can do both. It's not impossible, especially when the firstborn, they just sit there and they're like, you know, and I'd spend a year or two and just nod.
Right.
But like, I wouldn't wait till like, oh, I need $1 million in the bank. I get people all the time. Like I know people who are broke. They have 8 kids. Like just, they're not that expensive, right? Like Cheerios are not that expensive. Like if you need to, you know, like it's just being willing to be there and be loving and being present for as much as you can. Another thing that's been interesting, especially now that our kids are into teenagers, and it's like so much harder. Like that's even harder. Just like
really, that's harder than when they're young.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Dave's over here just laughing. It's different. Oh gosh. What am I in for, Dave? Oh no.
The young heart is like, I am tired. I like, that's the hard part when you're young. When they're older, it's just like, am I messing these kids up? Like, I just want them to be successful. Like that's the bigger fear. And it was interesting. I remember a little thing that gave me some grace. Like Tom Bilyeu, I heard it was just an Instagram post he had of him talking about how being a parent, and it was so funny because he's like, who here is scared that you were gonna, you know, F up your kids? That was how he would have said it.
Right. Yeah.
I say mess up. Who's gonna mess up your kids? And everyone's hands are like, yeah, I'm scared. And he's like, guess what? Yeah, make sure I get this right. He's like, my parents messed me up. Your parents, like, you're gonna mess your kids up. But guess what? We turn out okay in the end. Like just be okay with the fact that you're gonna mess your kids up because you are. And I remember I was like, okay, like everyone messed up their kids. Like that's part of it. Like, but that's part of the whole journey. And that's the journey. You know, it's like, that's part of it. And I think it gave me some grace of just like, look, I'm going to do my best. I'm probably going to mess them up. But at the same time, like you have to have faith, like they're going to do their thing and they're going to hopefully make good decisions. And if not, that's why we have God. That's why we have repentance. That way, all these things, you know, and kind of leave it to him and, you know, do your best.
So how did your parents, like, what did your parents do right for you? Like, what are the things? Cause like one of the things that I try to say it a lot, but I don't even say it enough. Like my parents have played absolutely tremendous. Like I owe so much of who I am today, like to my parents, indirectly in a lot of ways. Like my parents didn't teach me like about like money or like things like that. Like that's not what, that wasn't their gift, but like the principles of hard work and like family values and like biting your tongue, even though it doesn't seem like I bite my tongue. Oh my gosh, every day, right? Like I'm like, you know, not like
It could be worse, guys.
right? Like it could be way worse. And like some people would love that, but like, you know, like de-escalating situations and like having those, like I owe so much of who I am to those. And like, yeah, they messed up in a lot of ways. And like you said, but like, so what were some of the ways, like what were some of the things that your parents did right? Like what are the things that you remember from your parents?
Yeah. I love my parents. I was very blessed with my parents for sure. You know, my dad, I don't think my dad was super engaged when we were younger. Because just because he was, you know, he was in the phase we're in, like trying to figure things out and make money, and like it was different back then.
Is he an entrepreneur?
Yeah, but he also had a job, but he did side business, so he was always trying to figure things out. And I saw him doing these things. I saw like the job he didn't love, and then I saw like him doing stuff he did love, and I watched him work really hard. And then when I started wrestling, I saw my dad like that became the thing that me and him connected with, which like meant the world to me, and it was so important to him. And what's cool is that my dad showed up to every wrestling practice. He came to every single match with me. Like he built up he worked his day job was State Farm Insurance. He built up his book of business to the point where by the time I was wrestling, he was able to take off as much as he wanted, and it ran itself. He was making money and had residual income. And I remember like my dad was the only one. Like as soon as wrestling practice got done, my dad would walk in and we'd meet him do a practice afterwards. Like never missed a match, never missed, like he was always there. And I remember just thinking like, I want to make sure I have a business or something so that I can be there like my dad was for me. Like that was so important to me. And like I said, he wasn't super around when we were younger. I think he struggled as the younger kids, which I understand. But when that phase of my life, like he was there and he was my best friend, and it was awesome. I love that. And I've been trying to do that with my kids now. And especially times where maybe I wasn't as good of a dad, I was too busy. I'm trying to like now in other spots, try to connect more. That was them. That was my dad for sure. And then my mom is, for me, she was just like, I think I wouldn't say I'm a people pleaser, but I'm very much like an achiever, right? Like I think when I started wrestling and I saw my dad got closer to me, and then like I would win, I saw him get excited. Like I wanted to win because I wanted to impress my dad. To this day, I think I still have that. Where like part of the reason I'm in this business, I'm doing stuff, is I love when my dad sees it and it's just like, you know, like there's something like I love like impressing him. To this day, like that's just like I love that win. With my mom, it was like she loved me even when I didn't win. Like that was something that was so like foreign to me. I remember like I'd be cutting weight for wrestling. I'd eaten 3 days. I'd be so tired, so miserable. And she'd come down and sneak in my room, like bringing me food. I'm like, Mom, I can't eat. I'm not going to make weight. She's like, why don't you just quit then? I'm like, you don't need to do this. Like, and she's trying to get like, and she's like the opposite of my dad. And she loved me no matter what. And like, didn't care that I was trying to win or succeed, or couldn't care less. Like she just wanted me to be, you know, she loved me like just because I was me. And like, that was weird, but so cool as well. And so I think both those principles, like it's something I've tried to weave in. You know, I got two different sides. I'm trying to weave that into my kids. And again, so far from perfect, but I think those are two things that meant the world to me, that super grateful for them, you know, having like doing those things for me, because I still remember those things now.
So there is, which is, by the way, that's awesome. There's a lot of people in this world that are growing up without a dad, without a mom. And like, it's interesting because like, I think a lot of my social media posts, like I kind of come across sometimes like that heartless a-hole. Like, you know what I mean? A little bit like, but Josh, like, you know what I mean? Like you talk about like, take personal responsibility for your life. Everybody can do anything. It's like, if you're broke, it's your fault. Like that's one of my favorite sayings. Like if you're broke in America, it's your fault, right? Like there's like, Josh, like you don't understand. Like you grew up and your parents are like still married. Like, you know, like not only do you have parents, like they're still together and they still like actually love each other. It's not even that they're still together. Like it's like you're like a percentage of the percentage of the percentage in a lot of ways. So like what, I don't even know what question I'm asking here, but like, what would you do? Like, where could somebody find that? And like, what can we do as a society or just as entrepreneurs, as producers to like help those people? Because I feel like that's a really big need.
Sure. And
like, it's one of those things where I'm like, one of my big struggles with this is I always want to point back to the church. I had a really awakening come to Jesus moment back when I posted, this is probably a month ago or so. And I posted on Instagram actually. And I think you liked it actually. So I know you saw it. And I said, defund the media, defund fear, defund career politicians, fund orphanages, churches, and schools, right? And like I posted that on Facebook and I posted on Instagram. And I was shocked at how many people were like, dude, fund the churches. They're just as like, they're a bunch of pedophile people there too. They're, you know, like so many people had like such this negative view of the church. And like, I grew up in the church. Like that's what I knew. Like how I knew how family worked is because like I saw our own family, and then I saw the church family, and I saw the community, and like how the church was involved in the community. And like the church that I went to, like after I moved out, like Grable, Indiana, like I worked 3 doors down from it. And like that's where people went to vote, was in their gym and the fair. Like that's where people parked. Like the church was like such this integral part, part of the community. Right. And so like when I saw all these people that was my solution, right? Like there are like so many things. Like if you don't have a dad, like you can go to the church. Like if you don't have this, like you go to the church. It's like what? And if that's your answer, like that's cool. But like, how can we as producers of society and the people that are going out there and like making the money, how can we help those that don't have what you and I had?
It's interesting because you know what Mormons believe is the family is the central everything. That's God's plan is husband and wife starts a family. That's an eternal principle, right? And so you look at like the adversary, Satan, whatever you want to call him, like his job, like if he can destroy the family, like everything else falls apart. Like that's the war we're in right now. Like, we think we're in a lot of different wars. The war we're in is Satan is attacking families. That's it.
Okay, which I want you to finish this. I have to say this though, guys, and this is not Russell saying this. This is me. This is why I hate the Black Lives Matter organization, not movement, the organization so much, because their whole principle is breaking apart the traditional family values. Anyway, I know that's not I'm not speaking for Russell,
but yeah, if you Google family, the proclamation to the world, you'll see my beliefs on family. Like that we have it printed out 8 foot on my wall in my house. Like that's my belief. Family is central to everything. And so Satan is the way he destroys societies and nations and this world is to destroy the family. And so when you see families are broken, there's single mothers and single fathers, like it's heartbreaking. Like it's the saddest thing in the world. And I don't know the right way to solve it. I do know that it's vitally important. Like I remember first time I met Tony Robbins and started learning from him, like one of the principles he talked about in relationships is masculine and feminine energy. Like the masculine and feminine is key to like a relationship. Like I could go off like 4 hours just on masculine and feminine. Like it's like the most fascinating topic in the world. But you look at like, if you ever see how Tony fixes relationships, like you look at like traditionally, if you go to traditional counseling, they're like, there's a problem, right? Like what's the symptom of the problem? They try to solve the symptom of the problem. And like counseling takes years because it's a symptom of the problem. And Tony's like, like all the issues they're all symptoms of the problem. Like the real problem is like when there's a masculine and a feminine, and it doesn't matter, again, this is true with gay, straight, doesn't matter, like, but feminine, masculine energy, right? You take a masculine and feminine and that polar opposite, that's magnets that magnetize together, right? Like that's what creates traction, passion, and everything. So what happens, you have a masculine and feminine, they're attracted together, right? That's how you start, that's how any relationship starts, right? And then you look at people get married, and it's interesting because what Tony talked about, so you look at typically in a relationship, there's like what they call the 7-year itch. And why is that? And he talks about because the way the feminine causes change is, I wish I could, somebody want to write a book on this. I just don't know. I don't know it perfectly enough to explain.
Russell needs to become a writer.
But can say, yeah,
my word.
I got a lot of books to write. But so this is how it works in traditional marriage, right? So masculine and feminine. And what happens is one of the ways that feminine cause change is they criticize, right? Like if I see this with my wife, with friends, with girls, like if they want their friend to change their hair, they don't say like, hey, you should get a haircut. They'll criticize to try to cause change, right? So what happens is that a feminine
wow, that's so true.
So and this is yeah. That's just one example of feminine energy. And there's a million different things, right? But like, so feminine and masculine come together. So like, this is an example. It's like they'll start criticizing the man, but a masculine man doesn't care. Like it bounces off them. Like okay, right? What happens after 7 years of that happening? Eventually, instead of it balancing off you, which is the masculine response, you start taking it personal. Like, oh, as soon as you take it personal, guess what happens? You are shifting physically from your masculine to a feminine. You start shifting. And what happens? You shift from masculine to feminine, and boom, the attraction breaks. And it starts falling apart. And then all the other problems start happening. So the problem isn't solving the fact that you leave the toilet seat up, but that you don't communicate well. Like the problem is that the masculine and feminine attraction is broken. And if you fix the masculine and feminine, you make men become men and women become women, the attraction comes back and all the other symptoms disappear. It's fascinating. And so that's from a marriage, family, like relationship standpoint.
Okay, can I?
Yes,
I want to protect.
I'm telling this because I want to talk about this from the family with kids in a minute. But yes.
Okay, but I want you to now give me another example that Tony Robbins has said, because what you made it sound like there is that the way the woman does something is the thing that's causing the bond. I know that's not what you meant.
Oh, it could be. Yeah, that's
okay. I just want to make. I want to do that clarification.
It could be the same thing with the men, who the men are responding over and over, where women now become defensive and they become more masculine, and it's the other way. Yeah. Sorry, that's not the only example. I was just the one time.
I just want to make sure we clarify that, because I know things have been taken out of context.
Someone's going to be angry.
Yeah.
I apologize. I'm stupid. Like, I get it. But conceptually, does that make sense? Like, it's the break of the masculine and feminine that causes the split, which causes the disharmony. And if you bring the masculine and feminine together, that's what causes attraction and causes passion and causes all these things. I look at my life, like when we were struggling in our marriage, like it's because I'm showing up feminine. When I show up masculine, everything's great. Or my wife comes in masculine and I'm masculine, we butt heads. Like it's fascinating. And so, anyway, I don't want to get deep in this because there's so much stuff. But the reason I want to share this is because you look at this thing, like now you got a family, right? And the mother and the father split, right? And then there's kids who go with either the mother or the father. And now what they have is they've got either a very masculine person that they're learning from or feminine, but they don't see both. And so it shifts them, and then it shifts their relationship. Like so many problems. And so I think the way we help the most, or can help the most, is like Hermosi does this. Alex Hermosi does this. Like he donates his money to do you know the name of the charity? He got our first 2 Heart Award. It's after school kids. So like these kids where they go to like men who, there's these kids trying to play basketball or lift weights or whatever who don't have masculine energy in their life. They come and they donate their time and they help the kids.
That's awesome.
To bring masculinity. So now they all of us, we need male and female perspectives. Like we have to like it's designed to have those things together. When you lose one of them, it's a tragedy. So like I think the way we can start helping is like, how do we bring programs where they can see masculine energy and see the way to make it positive, not a negative thing. And like because a lot of times all they know is masculine energy left, and oftentimes there's a lot of anger between the people when they hear talking trash about the spouse and talking trash about these traits, which are like traits that are essential for them to develop. And I don't know if that's the right answer or not, but I feel like that's how we can help those things. It's just like helping understand like the kids who don't have a father or a mother, like they need that energy in their life to understand it, to be able to, I don't know. So, okay.
So this is seemingly unrelated to this, but I think that I can tie it back in because it's a question that I think fits in here. So I'm going to start with a super basic question, which I think the answer is obvious, but like we'll go down this road. Do you feel misunderstood as an entrepreneur?
I did early on. I did less so now.
Why is that?
When I got started, entrepreneurship has become more of a cool thing.
That's true.
In the last decade, since Shark Tank and stuff. Back when I first started, it wasn't. Everyone was confused. Like, why would you do that? It is cooler. Also, it's like, I think the more you talk, the more you either alienate people or you attract people. And I think a lot of people who I have alienated have been alienated. And I think I've attracted people I've attracted. So like my bubble of people around me are people who understand this lingo, who relate to it. So it's less hard now than it was initially.
Do you ever feel, so like, I believe that one of my like your superpower, like your art, your format is like marketing and funnels specifically. Like that's like what you do. And like, I feel like you could just sit there for hours and days and forever, for the rest of all of time, right? Like my superpower thing that I like to do is this, like communication. I love constructing words in a way that people can understand, right? Did you, I'm sure not, but like the Kanye West interview that Joe Rogan just did like 3 days ago.
I've heard about it.
Okay. So like, this has been a long awaited episode for like, nobody thought it was ever going to happen, right? Because it was like teased and it didn't happen. Finally happens. And so like, I see this. I had no idea it was coming. It like drops. And I'm a huge fan of Joe Rogan, right? And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's amazing, right? And I sit down and I look online and all these people are like, terrible interview, not worth your time, couldn't get past the first 20 minutes, like anything like that. I'm like, what? So I go, and the first 20 minutes were kind of like, and whatever. I get done with this 3-hour interview. It's like top 3 interviews of all time, right? And what's interesting is like, do you know Kanye about like how Kanye communicates like at all? Like, do you know? Okay, so like Kanye, there's so many references I want to use that you won't get. Like, so like Kanye like sees the world like fundamentally differently, and like how Joe describes it in there, and the way that I describe it is like and you wouldn't know this, like I said, because psychedelic, it's like a drug or whatever, but like imagine being on like a psychedelic drug, like in a small format, like at all times, like that's how his mind works. Like it's like sees everything. It's like expanded. And so even Kanye said, he's like, the reason I have such a hard time communicating sometimes is because I have to, like, I see things in 3-dimensional and then I have to put them in a 2-dimensional conversation, right? Now I'm not trying to compare myself the way I think to the way Kanye thinks, but like that, this concept of like him, people think he's beating around the bush, right? When really he's just trying to explain something. Like one of the things I love doing is taking a concept like that and figuring out how to describe it in a way the average person can understand. Because like I live in a different world, like just like you live in a different world than the average person does. Like I live in a different world, and that is by choice. Like I do not see the world the way that most people do. I intentionally do not want to see the world the way that other people do. Like everything that I do, like I will intentionally engineer to where like my life is different than the average person because I want to see the world differently. But I want to be able to communicate that in a way that they can understand. And so my question is like, you as an entrepreneur, like you understand what you're doing, but like you also live in a very different world. Like the average person would not understand you. And one of the questions that I'm about to ask you, I asked you out in the car was, like, how do you see the world differently now that like you're this big like entrepreneur? And like I feel like one of the things that the world is lacking right now, which is part of what we're trying to do with like Think Different Theory, is I think there's a lot of really smart people out there that have really, really good solutions. But the way that they go and do those solutions is by doing them. And they don't know how to communicate that to everybody else that is affecting. And if like people actually understood what it was that you were doing and like the reason behind it, like they could actually get on board. But I feel like a lot of people look at, and I'm not going to use Trump as an example, like Elon Musk or you or like whoever, like these entrepreneurs that are like going out there and they look at you like you're just greedy or you're like, you know, you're doing these things because that's just what you want. But like if they actually understood you and like your mind and like why you were doing it, like what drove you, then they wouldn't have a problem with it and they could actually learn a whole lot from it. Do you ever feel like if people that would criticize you, and maybe you don't listen to that anymore, but like people that don't understand you or criticize you or like entrepreneurs in general, like they have this thing, if they were able to communicate it better, not that they should, but like if they could, or if like people actually understood that would change the way that people act or like behave or like see entrepreneurship.
If they could, make sure I understand the question right.
Like imagine if I sat next to you all day long and every single good idea, like I could just extract from your brain and I could go communicate it to everybody else in a way that they understood, like you understand it, right? And imagine that for like all of entrepreneurship. Like all these people that we look at as like like greedy, selfish, you know, people, not you and I, but like, you know, the world does. Do you think that let me simplify the question. Do you think that there's a lot of great ideas stuck inside of producers' heads that if more people understood them and thought like that, we could change the world for the better, but because they're stuck in their head and that person doesn't know how to communicate it well or is not focused on that effect never happens?
Gotcha. Yes.
Yeah.
So I would say, and that's why I think for me, this art of like funnels and copywriting and storytelling is so fascinating because that's what it is, right? Like I always picture like when we have an idea in my head, it's like this big granite block, right? It's like, this is the idea. And to give it to somebody, you're like, this is the idea. You're like, I don't get it, right?
Right.
And then you start thinking about who is it? Start chiseling away at the stone, right? You start chiseling, which eventually you have this like amazing statue, right? Of like this thing that people can see and they can understand and they gravitate towards. I feel like it's the same thing with communication, right? Or with any kind of idea you're trying to sell. Like the funnel is one thing. Like right now, like, hey, you should buy my coaching programs. Like, why? Like, it's too big. Like I need to take them to a path to simplify that. So there's like a step-by-step process, which is like chiseling away. But then inside each step of the process, there's like the words and the stories, like things you communicate to simplify it, to get more and more fine-tuned. Like that's why for me, like when we create a funnel, we launch it, it's like taking this big granite block and chiseling it down to like now it's something that somebody can come in on this side of it. They go through a process. And by the time they're done at the end, they're going to give us money. They're going to get a product and they're going to change, like something's going to change for them. I think that's what marketing is, right? It's that process of like trying to simplify the message. And I think 100% that's why most ideas don't get out, right? How many times, like, I don't know, how many times have you had, and this kind of comes back to talk about, who knows, an hour or two ago too, but like 4 or 5 people get the same idea, but then one person executes on it. It's like the person who understands the communication the best is the one typically who gets it out, right? Like, I mean, how much of your life, of my life has been focused on the communication? And I don't necessarily like that part as much. Like it's not my favorite part, but it's such an essential tool. I remember when I was learning, when I got in this game and I was trying to sell my very first product, Zip Brander. And I was like, I put it up, I had a picture of it, buy now button, and like tried to send traffic and nobody bought. And someone's like, we need a headline. So I'm like, okay. So I put a headline, like we need, like, tell us what this does. And so I like found some sites that kind of model what they did. and then people started buying, and it was like learning that process of how do you communicate. I remember thinking like, I never want to learn how to write communicate. Like for me, it was copy. Like that's what we all call back then. Like, I don't want to write copy. Like, I don't want to do that. That sounds horrible. And I wanted to hire someone, but like the people I tried to hire was expensive. It was like $10,000 to $20,000 for a sales letter. I couldn't afford it. So I'm like, I have to learn this art of how to communicate. And like, so grateful because like, that's how everything we built has been, is off like the communication of an idea and doing it in a way that gets people to move.
How do you decide what you're going to communicate? Like you have a lot of ideas in your head,
Yeah.
and you have a lot of different thoughts on everything. And like you choose to share funnels and marketing primarily. And then you have some religion in there, which I would say probably is like number 2, maybe ish of like what you communicate. But that's like it. Like, how do you decide
The battles I want to choose?
Yeah. Yeah.
Battles. That's a good question. I mean, part of it's like, what's interesting? Like, why did I want to do this interview? Like, I read the book, it was fascinating. Like, and I don't know the answers. And I thought this would be a fun way to talk it out loud. Like, it's fascinating. Funnels are fascinating me because like I can apply it to so many things. You know, when I talk about wrestling, but not in the community that you bump into. But
Oh yeah, that's true.
I talk about that. Like, so I think it's just the ideas that fascinate me that I feel like have the most validity and can do the most, you know. Again, as an introverted person, I don't typically go out and have conversations with people because I'm like, you know, as much as I can. But if I find something that does cause an effect, right? That's why like I practice telling my stories so many times, and I'll do a podcast and because like I know like now when I'm on stage in front of 9,000 people, the stories can get people to move because I practice it. So I think I'm putting a lot of things out in the water and then seeing what things people relate to, and then I go deeper on the ones that are like, okay, this one had an impact. There's a lot of stuff. I remember writing the first version of .com Secrets. There were 7 or 8 chapters more that never got published. And I was going to publish them all.
Do you have copies of those?
It was like, yeah, it was like all my best stuff at the time that I knew, and I was going to publish it. And it was all in the book. And I remember I heard an interview with Tim Ferriss and Ryan Holiday. It was Ryan Holiday at the time, and they were both talking. Yeah, I think so. Anyway, talking about their books. Both of them said that when they write a typical book, you know, Tim Ferriss's books are like this fat. My first draft was like twice as big. He's like, to make a book go from good to great, it's not like adding more, it's cutting. He's like, I cut 2/3 of my book to give you this one. And then I think it was Ryan said the same thing. He's like, it's not like, he's like saying that my books start the first draft is twice as big as the final one. Then the next section is cut. I remember going back to .com Secrets that night, and I was like, okay, based on that, if I like, what would I cut and how would that do? And I cut 7 chapters out. And after it's done, I was like so scared. I'm like, this is like, I love these things, but I was like, those things aren't that important to like get people what they need to actually be successful. Well, some of those things ended up being in .com Secrets and Expert Secrets in other places, but yeah, I wonder that first version.
I was gonna say, I wonder if she published the first thing or if she like had a 2,700 page book, and cut something out of it. That's crazy. Okay, back to the question in the car, and I want to tie this back to the book. How has growing a multi-$100 million, like making hundreds of millions of dollars, having a roughly $1 billion company, being the CEO of 400 employees, like how has that changed your perspective of the world?
Yeah, I think so many things I could respond. I think it is. I think there was a season in my life where I thought that like if I was going to create something, if I was going to do something, that like the way I was going to do it by me. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And in fact, if you look at my history, the first decade of business, the businesses were about me. They were me. I was the sole owner, the sole person. And on this journey, when we started it was so different. It was like, how do we, like, what's the team look like? How do we, like, who, you know, Todd was my first time I had a partner. It was like, that was so scary for me. And then that's been the greatest thing I possibly could have done. Right. And then we brought in other partners and then employees and man, and like stuff. And like, I don't know, it's been fascinating just realizing that like to build this, it wasn't about me. It was about, I don't know, just that whole thing. And I think, anything great, a lot of times there's a person that gets credit for, like Elon Musk gets credit because he's whatever, Bill Gates or whoever the people are, they get the credit for it. But it's like, you start really seeing, how many people are involved to make something amazing. You know what I mean? I think that's the biggest thing for me as I started growing it. And it's frustrating, not frustrating for me. I enjoy it. I like, you know, people always say, Russell invented ClickFunnels. I'm like, I literally don't know how to code anything. Like there's not one dot of code in that word that I like. Maybe once I leaned over Todd's shoulder, put a button in, then he had to delete it. Like, you know, but I think it's cool when you see that, like how many, and before Fun Hiking Live, every time we start, we bring our whole team together. And I see, you know, I'm the one who's on stage, but I am fully aware that that it is not me. Like, this is us. Like if it wasn't for this team and these people, like for all of you guys, for all your contribution, this wasn't possible. I want to always ground that, because I think sometimes that the leader or whoever gets a big head where they think it's them. And I don't know. And I see that with a lot of people who are on big stages where they still drink their own Kool-Aid, they still think it's them. And I think that's my shift in the world. Just understand like the great things, like the things that we remember, the things that are legacies that go on and on and on. There may be a head or a person that the branding tied to it, but it's like there's this group of people that created something amazing.
But how did you how do you stay grounded? Like, one of the things that I am a huge fan of Russell Brunson, right? Because for me, you're the person I look up to as not just, hey, you taught me how to make a lot of money, but hey, I want to be I want to have the character that you have. I don't want to have, I look at Grant Cardone and you don't have to talk smack about Grant Cardone, but I can, right? And Grant Cardone is really, really full of himself, right? And don't get me wrong, I've learned a lot from Grant Cardone, especially about money. He's changed my perspective about a lot of things. I'm eternally grateful for that. But if I grew up to be Grant Cardone, where that was the focus. I mean, I watched him. I was there when, it was the stadium down in Miami or whatever, right? When it was, it was all about him. And it was, I think he even got up on stage and was like, oh yeah, Russell, everybody says Russell's the greatest salesman, but I'm the one that packed the house, right? And I'm like, dude, you know what I'm saying? Why? Why is that necessary? And so how do you stay grounded? Yeah. Right? Because I think it's so fascinating to watch different type of people. And I know Ty Lopez, for example, for a while there, it was all about Ty. And now he's kind of gone more behind the scenes. But I'm each person I watch, whether it's Ty or Gary or Grant, they all have a different way about them. And you have your way about them. But the one that I see is the most grounded, humble, is there's nobody that's looking at you. You get up on stage and you're like, I am Russell Brunson. You know what I mean? You know, it's
awkwardly
hey. Right. And then you walk up and Grant's but you, it's yeah, it's that awkward of hey, I'm just over here. How are you grounded in that? How do you not let it get to your head? Because it would be so easy for you to get wrapped up in your own head.
Someone told me it's because of my wife. They said, if you married anybody else, your head would be so big. I think,
so I met your wife for the first time today. I mean, we had crossed paths, but I said, when you were getting your haircut, I was like, so what's it like being married to Russell? She goes, he's just the sixth child of mine. I'm like, oh boy, she's a big kid.
That's awesome. I think I'd say it's two things. And we kind of talked about this earlier, but I'll tie back to the first one is that I am fully aware that these ideas are not mine. Right. I didn't invent the funnel. I didn't invent any of the stuff in here. All I know is that I was on a path in a journey and I was given the thing and the next thing. And I was freaking out and I was putting them together. And so that's part of it. It's this stuff's not mine. It's stuff that was given to me and we tested. And so I'm so grateful for that. It's never me oh, look what I invented. That's so annoying because it's not, right? These are, again, come back to these ideas, these thoughts, these desires are things that were given to us. And so I think that's the first part. The second part of it is, and I see this a lot in people in my world who they have some success and then they're like, this is my person. I made them a bajillion, and I hate that too. Cause it's just you help them in a piece, but they did the work.
Right.
I'm very careful, to always, when I'm talking about any of our success stories, I didn't make that person. We had this super cool opportunity to be a piece of their journey, right? We helped them, give them some ideas and a tool, but they're the ones that kill. I know what it takes to build what they're building. I didn't do that. They did that. And I'm grateful that they did. And I'm even more grateful that I got to be a little piece of it. I got to be part of that journey. I got to see that and just have the impact of oh my gosh, because I killed myself and wrote those books and because Todd killed himself and wrote software and I was able to communicate it, they're able to do this thing. And it's not all me. I know fully well it's not on me. I know what every entrepreneur has to go through to be successful. And it's not a mentor who gives you everything. It's just a lot of people who are peace. And I've had mentors who gave me a piece that I'm so grateful for, but then they try to take all the credit. Oh, this is when, and I hate that too. And so I think those two sides, number one is again, I don't think these ideas are something I came up with. They were given to me, and I was a good steward of them. And so because I was able to aggregate them, and like, there's the thing. And then number two is just my belief that I didn't help anyone. Like, even like when you said like you and Katie, like I felt awkward, like, oh, like I didn't do anything.
Right.
Like, I luckily some of the stuff that you resonate with you and is like a little piece of your journey. I'm
Right.
so grateful for that.
Right.
And like the fact to see you do stuff now is like so much fun for me to watch you, and like just knowing that like, man, because he bumped into me, like maybe something happened and now he's doing this stuff and this work. And it's so cool seeing how you're impacting people. And I think those are the reasons why I don't think my head gets big, because I don't think it's me. I'm grateful that I get to be a piece of it, of the journey. But I'm not the creator of it.
All right. I want to loop back to the book.
Okay.
Can we talk? Can we
just read it? You guys want us to read it to you?
Yeah.
Chapter 1.
Hey, by the way, who got t-shirts?
Oh yeah.
Let's like engage back with the people
I'm
we've got over
curious.
here in our little world.
Hey, you're still there?
Yeah.
There's still people there.
How many guys got t-shirts? Let's see.
You refresh
Do we have more? I don't know. Oh, I don't know if this is
it real time counter? Maybe it's not real time.
either that or my news back down every 7 days. Ooh. Guys, I'm gonna go buy a bunch. I'm just gonna go be.
Yeah.
I'm gonna order my.
Go to t-shirtsmackdown.com and tell us whose shirt you like better. The only way you vote with your wallet.
You guys,
size you want.
These are literally only available for what, 7 days? We do a new one every day. So if you want these, basically the only two people in the whole world that have them right now is me and Russell. So if you want me to join the Cool Kids Club, go to t-shirtsmackdown.com.
So this one says Reardon Still. So if you read the book, Hank Reardon is one of the main characters, and this is and it's amazing. So there's Reardon Still, and this is who is John Galt, one of the main characters in the book.
Yeah.
And, even if you haven't read the book yet, you're eventually going to want to read it. So get it.
Yeah, like guys, come on. You want to read it? It's a light read. You can do it in like, I think it's 68 hours or 64 hours on Audible.
If you start reading it, just be aware that like she has a ton of character development up front. And it takes a little while to get past that into like, then like, but it's worth it because the character development, you care enough about the characters when it gets into like the action. It's just like, it's amazing, but it takes a little bit, for first 10% takes a little bit to get through.
Yeah. Yeah. And it helps for me. Like it kind of helps to like know what the premise of the book is. I think I'd have a really hard time reading this if I didn't know what the premise of the book was. So like maybe like browse the cliff notes.
Or even just go back to the beginning of this interview. Like you led it talking about that was more than I knew getting into it. Like that would help a lot knowing that ahead of time.
Okay. All right. Okay. So the book, what was the thing that fascinated you about it? Like when you boxed me, dude, you were like, dude, I read it and I'm geeking out about it. I just want to geek out about it. Like what about it had you so fascinated? Like, what did you want to geek out about it? Because I have a question that I want to ask like later on about it, but like, what was the thing that like just made you geek?
There are a lot of things. I think the biggest thing that I was really excited. We talked about earlier was just. Sorry,
I know that's good.
The biggest thing earlier,
in your own direction.
Yeah, the biggest thing earlier was just this again. For those who are tuning in late, in here, there's a whole. It talks about greed, right? And that concept of greed versus charity. Like, again, the book very much is like greed is good. It's the thing that causes production, and you should care about yourself, and then good things will happen. Like you'll create jobs and everything. Everything else take care of yourself as long as you're caring most about yourself, which I thought was kind of cool. But then also I had the other side of with like my beliefs in Christ and Christianity and all these things like that, where it's just like, oh, like how does that reconcile with faith, hope, charity, and love, and like, serving everybody else, and like. And so that was like, that's probably the thing that got me the most. I think that I think about that a lot, especially in politics, because again, I'm not deep into politics. I'm not going to talk about who I'm voting for or not voting for. It doesn't matter. But I see that on both sides. I feel like on the Republican side, you see a lot of this stuff like this. And then on the Democrat side, you see a lot of like the charity stuff. And again, in my notes, I wrote this actually initially because I wanted to talk about this. Like, I'm a big believer that like, there's not like a right and a wrong. There's good in both sides. Right.
There's not a right and a wrong, like right or wrong side.
Yeah, there's like things are messed up on both sides. Like I think that there's like it's just how the world works. Like Satan and like there's this eternal struggle between God and Satan and Christ. Like this is always happening. So there's two sides, and there's God like principles and things on the right that are amazing, and then there's Satan that's twisting things and jacking up. Same thing on both sides. Like. So that's why it's hard for me. Like I see everyone fighting like with tooth and nail. I'm like, I bet you if we all sat down, the majority of all issues we'd all agree on. But then it's like the fringe things that cause like so much hatred and fighting, and just drives me crazy. And I think that this book's a perfect example. Like where I believe so much in some of these principles, but there's also like the opposite of principles. I also believe it, and they're both right. And it's like and that's what I mean, if you missed the beginning part of the interview, we talked more about that. But it's like the greed and the growth and contribution. That transition is like the key that just fascinates me.
Yeah. So like what parts of the book contradicted the most with your faith? Like what part of the books did you have like the hardest time with because of your faith?
Yeah. The producers in the book, the minds, the people that I connect with, because like that's who I self-identify as a producer, someone who's obsessed with like production and creating and like, right, like I relate. So Hank Reardon, Dagny, like all these people, like I relate, like they're cut from my same cloth, and it's as they're growing this stuff that they didn't give back, that they didn't like that's the thing. Like I felt like they weren't rounded out characters, and like I think that's the biggest thing for me. It's just like I don't want to be like first half of the book I want to be Hank Reardon, like he's freaking the man. He's
right.
Like yes, that's what I want to be. But then I wanted to see him have like that change of heart where he's Christ-like and he gives of his own free will, not because the government came with the gun and told him he's got to pay taxes. I wanted to see his character develop and realize that, oh my gosh, like I should be serving people because I love them, not because the government's forcing me. Like that's the piece I wish, because that's
it like never,
you know what I mean?
It like never took that turn. Like the book, it was like you almost like expected it, and then it didn't happen.
And it got worse and worse and worse, and then they wait till everything's like people are dying, everything collapses, and then like the lights in New York go out, whoo, and they're like, okay, now we can come back and build.
Now we can come back and build, but like even when they come back and build, it was built like by our new law of right of like basically. So actually, one of the things that's fascinating about that was it in it was towards the end when was it Galt? I think it was Galt who was like basically I think it was during a speech when he was like all we wanted was like we gave the minds of society, like we gave all this stuff to you guys basically, and like kind of being like God there, but like we get like here we did, we created all this stuff, we created these jobs, we created these resources, like we gave it to you, and all we wanted from you guys was for you to let us be in our own head, like let us our minds be free and not be controlled by anything else. And you took all that, and not only did you take it all, then you said no, you're bad, and we're gonna take that away too. And so we're all going on strike because of that. And like you relate to that so much, and then it's like yes, but then they explain how they live, and it's like you expect them to have that change of heart, but it's no, it's because we are amazing and because we are the great minds and we must live by this code. It has nothing to do with like actually giving back or actually contributing to society. It's like they didn't care about contributing to society. That just happened to happen.
Yeah, which is cool, which is why, again, government should let producers produce, because the byproduct is really good. Right, for everybody. So like that part is so much I relate to. But then, and part was probably because Ayn Rand didn't believe in God. Like, so that wasn't, you know what I mean? It's like, that wasn't part of her values. And so it's tough because then she weaved that. I just wish at the end of the book it would have been like, and then Hank Reardon realized that he could help all these people himself. And so he built orphanages and changed all these kids' lives. And you're like, yes, he's like that would have been amazing. You know, he found out OUR and he went and donated money and saved all these children. Right. But he did his own free will because he had that change of heart. Because that's like, I don't want to die at the end of my days. And like, I produced and created jobs, but like, I didn't care about people. Like, I feel like that missed the mark.
Hank Reardon, you say, is the person you related to most in the book?
Yeah, I think so. I wanted to be Francisco though. He was pretty sweet.
Who do you think? Who do you think I related to most in the book?
No. I'm trying to remember all the characters now. Who was it?
It's a relatively main one.
Was it?
You were close.
Oh, was it Francisco?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, he was
cool.
Right from the beginning, he like fascinated me, and like I knew, like right when, she introduced the plot twist of where like he like ran off and became the playboy or like picture himself as a playboy or like whatever. Like I knew right then and there, like I was like, I don't know what the plot, like I don't know what the connection is, but I like know this is gonna come back around. It's like not gonna be how it seems, right? Like because like someone like him, the mind doesn't shift, and like then he stays in the scene or whatever. But like he fascinated me because he strikes me as someone. Hank Reardon didn't care about the crowds. He did not at all, right? Like he hated going to the wedding. He hated going. Like it was by force that his wife would like drug him out there that one time. It was always like, oh, I just want to work in my office, or whatever. Like I'm actually not like that, right? I am actually much more like I do like the crowds, but I don't like the crowds because like I need praise. It like, don't get me wrong. Like I like being on stage and, you know, like doing this type of stuff, whatever. But like for me, like I like the crowds because I love people, and it's funny because I actually don't get along with a lot of people like in real life. Like whenever I go to the airport, I'm like, I will pay whatever it takes. Like put me on a plane first, the least amount of people I have to deal with, whatever. Cause like, I don't want to have to interact with people that I want to interact with, but like, I love like studying and understanding people's minds. Right. And for me, one of the reasons I am so fascinated by Donald Trump is because of how he can control the crowds. Like you look at his rallies, dude, like you can't ignore them. Like they're just huge. My fiance's parents, like they went, or her mom and Forti went yesterday, I think it was last night, to Omaha. Like 29,000 people showed up in the bitter cold of Omaha, like a last minute notice to and I'm like, that type of control, or not even control, but like that type of influence to be able to go through, like, what is it that makes people go and do that? Like, and so like Francisco in the book, like he was the partier guy, and like he went and he was with the crowds and he was very good with words and articulated. And then he sold me like at that wedding. Yeah. And I'm telling you, but like, that was good because to me, there's more than two ways, but like super simplified down, there's like two ways to affect, like influence people. There's one, which is the indirect, which is like build a software company. It's build a product. It's build an iPhone, right? It's like, you're not directly influencing them with like your words or like whatever. It's like, but it's like influencing their behavior by creating a product, by creating a service that's going to go out and change the world. And then the other way is to actually go out there and change them with your words. Yep. Right. And so that's why, like Jesus, for example, Jesus didn't build a product, right? He did it through his words, kind of, sort of, but like, to me, that's so fascinating. Yeah. And I'm like, if I can figure out how to do that, like that's how I can affect real change in the world. And it's funny because like you have had such a massive influence on my life, but probably like a year and a half, maybe ish into like me knowing like ClickFunnels, I was like, man, Russell's doing it all wrong. And I had this thing of like, if Russell would communicate more about stuff besides funnels, like he would have a bigger impact. Right. And like, I had this like limited belief of like, this is the only way you can influence and impact people is by like going out there and actually like speaking to them. Right. But like, that's my superpower and my gift. So like in the book, Francisco was the one I think that best represents like my style of like trying to go out and do things. I find it interesting about Hank Rader with you because
like Hank is like, I'm saying I got to be in here building funnels, doing some stuff.
Right.
Like there's scenes of Hank in the book where he's sitting there looking out over the factories at night and he watches like the steel being poured, it's glowing. And
yeah,
he's like, he's enjoying that. Like for me, it's similar where like I do the stage thing and things like that. I get less value out of like even interactions hard, but like I spend a lot of time on social media at night just looking at the people that I know are in our world and watching what they're doing. Cause that's like me watching this still like, cause like I'm not like my mission is not to go teach people how to do what you do. Right. I'm giving you like a blowhorn so you can go do it.
Yeah.
And so like, that's more fast for me to sit back and it's funny. Cause my wife, at events, it drives her crazy because the event will happen and it'll get done. And then I scurry off. So I don't want to like talk to anybody. And I sit in the room and I just like watch like what people are doing, the takeaways and like who they're talking to. Like I spend a lot of time just like watching. That's for me, like looking over the steel and be like, I gave them a trumpet or I gave them a blowhorn. And now their message is going out there. And I can just kind of watch it. And so for me, it's like, I don't want to teach personal development and this and that, but I want to like empower or give these tools or whatever tools there so that you can, and, you know, whoever all the other influencers are to be able to do those things. Does that make sense? Like, yeah. I'm like an amplifier. I'm an amplifier of other people's messages. And my message just happens to be like, here's the amplification thing you need to amplify your message.
Yeah.
Letting everybody else go and do it.
So one of the things you talk about in, well, actually expert secrets, but I think I think they mentioned it. She kind of mentions it in this book too, is like creating belief by like looking up to somebody. And like, if you can't see it, if like nobody else has done it, then it's hard for you to people to kind of like imagine it and ingrain it. So like, like for me, I look up at, I'm like, who do I want to be like? What business do I want? I'm like, okay, cool. Like you and your books, like I want to be like that type of bit here. And then like for Katie Richards, is another one. I'm like being a powerful person just in general. I'm like, okay, like these are like the people that I like look up to. And I'm like, okay, like that's what I'm going towards. So like for you, who are those people like in your life that you like look up to and you're like, okay, like that's it. Cause I feel like the higher you get, and I mean, you're not all the way up the ladder, right? Like there's still plenty more, but like you're way above where the average person is going to get to. The average person has a lot of people they could look up to. Like you, there's a lot less options, I feel like. So like, who are those people that like you look up to and go, okay, like that's what I'm trying to be more like, or that's where I learn my lessons from.
Yeah. There's different parts of my life for different people too. You know? Yeah. Like I look at the business side. I think the companies I aspire to be like, Salesforce, Shopify, HubSpot, like those companies are just like the next tier, but from where we are that they've crossed the chasm where we're still trying to figure out how to that next tier, right?
Yeah.
I think watching them has been, that's what we said. We go to Dreamforce 2 years in a row just because I wanted to, I talked about actually my podcast.
Yeah.
When I was out there, like I needed to see it to like understand it. Cause like, I remember when I was wrestling, my dad, my freshman year took us to the I just started wrestling, took us to the state tournament. I saw this guy on my team win state and I was like, that's what I want. I knew exactly what it was.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that became my goal. And I was like, yeah, again, you have to see it to do it. So I think for me, like, those are kind of the business I look up to. People, I mean, Tony, from like an influence, like people speaking, Tony still to me is like, who's bigger than him, right?
Right.
Or better. And like the fact I've had a chance to build a friendship with him is really cool because it's been interesting to see him not on stage. You know what I mean? Like everyone has a chance to see him on stage and he's the best in the world there, but then you see him off stage and see like who he really is. And it's just cool to see that, I don't know, someone who's been doing this for that long, consistently, who still cares, who's still doing this. He doesn't need money, but he still is doing events almost every day of the year because he like, you know, he wants that. So I
I think he can stop.
yeah. And I get like, I have so much respect for that. So I think that's a big thing. Yeah, just different areas of life. There's different people, but
what's it like?
I've tried harder and harder to get closer and closer to him because I like understanding them, not just from like the outside, but understand from inside because it's a different perspective that you don't get typically. You know what I mean?
Yeah. What is it like? Like, what is Tony like?
Honestly, he's like a little kid. We went to his house and I can't talk about the details. We had a slide in his house and he went down the slide with us and it was really cool. And like, we had a chance to go with him and did a meditation thing. And like the way he served us when we were with him at his house, you can tell that's how he wishes he could serve everybody. And like there's his heart, like you saw him, like he's in this room serving us and like he's crying and you see his emotion. You're just like, oh my gosh, like he would do this for everyone if he could, but he can't. So that's why he's doing these big scale things, but it's the best way he can do that. But I think if he could, he would do that for every single human that he could. Like it's really, I don't know. It's cool. There's been a lot of situations I've been around him where he could have easily like turned it off, like in a, but it's sincere. Like it's like you don't turn it off. You know what I mean? And I try to be that way as much as I can, and hopefully you've seen that with my kids. My
family, for sure.
Like I try to, and obviously like there's Russells who are more introverted and more reserved, and then there's Russell who's going to be like raw, but it's still like the same. Hopefully, like I want to be congruent like that. Like I respect him because he's in every situation I've seen him, he's always been congruent. Yeah, which is not, I can't say about most people in our industry.
Yeah,
in the world,
for sure.
Which is unfortunate because it's just like I remember one time I was in an event and I heard this guy speak. It was awesome. And like he breaks down crying in the middle of his event, in the middle of the speech. And I was like, this guy's great. And he got off stage and he looks at me, he's like, what do you say? Something like, I pull out the fake tears again. I was like, what? Like I remember just feeling like I just felt so sick. Like I would like, how does someone do that? And like not, he was like all proud of it, like, like I got him with my thing. And like I just remember feeling so just dirty and like I just didn't like that. I was like, I don't want to be that way. I don't want people saying like, oh, like yeah, Russell's different in here than here. Like I don't want people saying that. Yeah,
like one consistent person, like the same person on and off stage.
Yeah,
like there's certain people that like you just know, like you meet them and they're genuine all the way through, right? Like I'm trying to think, like Catherine Jones, right? For example, like she's awesome, right? I had dinner with her and well. God. I had dinner with her and some friends.
Am I allowed to say?
Yeah, her and some friends when I was in Utah last, and like I've had her as a client. I've watched her on speak on stage at Funnel Hacking Live. I've like had dinner with her, and it's like it is the same person, right?
So cool.
And like and there are people like that, and they're rare. I really do.
That's what people say is like you never want to meet your mentors because they're going to disappoint you.
Yeah,
because of that. Because it's like, oh, you put on this pedestal and you see them in real life, and like, huh, well, that's disappointing. Then it negates all the stuff. That's my biggest thing is I don't want somebody who like I gave them something like that helped them, and then they see me in real life, and it's like, oh, and it negates the value you just gave them, which it does, right? Like,
it really does because it takes away the trust factor.
Yeah, and so it's just like I don't know. So I think I was nervous meeting Tony the first time. So I'm like, what if?
Yeah, no kidding.
And then see him multiple times over and over and over, and you're just like, cool. Like it's just neat to see that.
So what's interesting is one of my biggest reservations about Tony before, like Funnel Hacking Live was actually the thing that like warmed me up to Tony. because I didn't really know a whole lot. Like I never experienced Tony like I have, like at Funnel Hacking Live or like anything like that. Like it's so crazy. Like you walk into the room when he's talking and it's like you feel the energy.
Nobody
shift.
on earth has presence like that.
It is insane. Like everyone like tells you about it, but like you don't really believe it until you experience it. And I remember actually it was in Orlando the first time, like when he was down there or whatever. And I remember he came, like he was in the, like I was in the room when he entered, and like energy, obviously, just like when anybody walks on stage, was like, cramped up. But then like he just went into his normal talking. And I remember leaving the room. And like most people, like you walk in and you feel it. And I remember like opening that door and like shutting it. And like the whole, like my whole body like shifted out of this high energy state into this low energy state. And I felt like if I was just in that room, I could literally go forever, right? Like it was just this nonstop source of energy. But what was interesting about Tony is like, Tony doesn't really talk about God, which is super interesting. Like, I don't know what faith Tony is. And maybe he's talked about it in like, something like that. And so for me, like one of the biggest struggles that I had, because like growing up and like when I first left the house, when I first got into entrepreneurship, I like really wrestled with God, right? Especially, like going through the death of my brother, like was actually ironically the thing that brought me back to God. But like I really, really wrestled with that. And so for Tony, it was like, he's got all this energy and he's connecting to this higher source and it's like talking about all these things, but like he never ties it to anything. Like he never gives credit to, this is the story I'm telling myself, at the time, like he's never giving credit to like this higher thing. Like, where's that all come from? And then like, the more I got to know Tony, not personally, but like through his work and like through watching his videos and like seeing my Funnel Hacking Live, I'm like, I don't know what it is that he believes. I've never sat down, and if I ever get to interview him, I'm absolutely asking him that question. But like, whatever that is, I don't think it's possible to be incongruent. Because it's like, I don't know. It's not of earth almost. It's like you're tapping into something that isn't like, in order to operate at that level, you can't be selfish. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. Do you sense that with him at all? Like,
yeah. And it's, I think, and I'm sure you've seen it before, like you talk political and like your audience gets cut in half, right?
Yeah.
I think for him, he's traveling such a global thing. I mean, Tony is Christian, but it's tough because he's like half the world he speaks to are not Christians.
Right.
So he draws that line because he doesn't want to alienate people, because he's like, I'm here to serve. God didn't send me to serve a certain group, is to serve everybody. And I think that's my guess is why he doesn't anchor that in as a hard thing, because his audience is so massive. But he definitely, if you ask him, like he definitely knows where it's coming from. You know what I mean? He's wherever he talks about it, he's first time he told me, he's like, it's funny because I'd experienced this myself and didn't had words to put to it. He's like, I come on stage, I have a plan, everything's there. I start talking, and all of a sudden, like something comes through me, and he's like, it never comes out the way that I plan, but it always comes out perfect. And he's like, as long as I follow that, he's like, it always just works out perfect. And I've had so many times where like again, I start talking about something, I don't know where I'm going, like, why am I talking about this? And then all of a sudden it's like, oh wow, and there's somebody that was the thing that shifted in form. You know what I mean? I think the more that you tap into that, the more, again, it comes back to talking about before, like the more you do that, God's giving you this like this thing, and if you have stewardship over it and you use it, he'll give it to you more and more. And Tony now, who's been doing it for 40 years, like
it's actually interesting, super interesting you say that. So literally, every Tuesday I meet with Katie, right? And we have our one-on-one call and we talk for an hour. And one of the topics of conversation was, I was like, Katie, we were actually talking about like getting ready for this interview. I was like, I don't feel nervous at all. Right. And I'm like, and I'm getting so many texts and DMs, whatever, like, oh my gosh, are you nervous? Like, what even messed up? And like so many different things. Right. And I'm like, I don't feel any of that. Right. Like, I feel like this is just like, all right, cool. I'm flying out to Russell. We're going to hang out. It's going to be great. We're going to come. And I'm like, so why is everybody else telling me I should be nervous? Right. Like, why is that a thing? Right. And one of the things that she said was like, and being who you are, and like, being your person, knowing yourself, and like doing this. But one of the things that we talked about was like some of the things that you have to accept by faith. And I was really wrestling with this idea of like, am I supposed to be prepared? Like, like Russell voxed me and was like, this is the first interview he's ever prepared for. I'm like, I just read the book. Like, I don't have any notes prepared for it. I'm just going to show up and talk. Right. Like, that's what I do. And she's like, but that's your superpower. Like that. And sometimes you have to just have faith. And she's like, you prepare 80% of the way and like leave the 20% up to God. And she's like, and most people are not going to understand that. And for a lot of people, that's going to freak it out. But she's like, how many times have you prepared something 100% you knew every word you're going to say? And I'm like, very little. She's like, well, think back to one of the times you did. I'm like, okay. She's like, how'd it go? It's like, well, terrible. It was like some of my worst person, like the most prepared I come, the biggest it'll flop.
Yeah.
Right. And she's like, and the least you prepare sometimes, you just walk in confidently, you do your best, it turns out amazing. Like, yeah, just because that's what Tony's talking about. Like, it just comes over you. It's like, if you have faith that when you show up and become like you are the best version of yourself, you show up the most prepared you can be, and you just fully embrace that and have faith for the rest, like God, the universe, whatever you want to call it, I feel like just works the rest of it out.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's why before I do anything, I pray before this call or before this interview, before I step on stage every single time. Cause a big part of it's like, without that, like what good are your words? You know what I mean? If you're doing it with the spirit, with God, whatever you want to call it, for me, it's the spirit. If you do it with the spirit, then it'll touch people in a way that you can't just by your words alone. And so I always ask that and I look for help. And I remember, I think Stephen Larson, the first time he was working for me, we did our first event in the room over here. And I remember before I would do the events myself, he started working for me and I was in the back here and I was saying a prayer and he walked in. He's like, oh, sorry. He's like, whoa, that's cool. I'm like, what? He's like, you prayed before you go out there. I was like, oh yeah. Like, I'm not going out there by myself. Like, I'm not that good. So I need help. And shows up when you prepare.
All right. I have two questions that I want to ask you before we get kind of go to rapid fire and kind of bring this to a close. I don't know. We could probably go all night, but
you guys want to keep going all night? You want us to go to bed?
How much longer do we go for you guys? Are you guys liking this? Comment down below. Let us know. Give some feedback. Do you like it? Do you not like it? What are your thoughts? We've been going for about 3 hours. Yeah, I figured it was going to go at least this long.
I guarantee there's going to be some of you guys who are like, I agree with everything. Some be like, I agree with half. And some be like, I don't understand what they're saying. I agree with nothing. That's okay. There's nothing again, our goal is not to motivate, was not to try to convince you guys of anything. That's not my goal. Our goal is to flesh out these ideas and hopefully you guys come on the journey and get some cool ideas from it and see how we perceive life. I think what's fascinating is everybody has such a different perspective on life. And so many times we hear something else perspective, we get offended. It's like, what if you didn't get offended and just listen to their perspective? And maybe you don't listen to everything, but you're like, oh, I'm going to take that and that. Those are two things that were really cool for me. And just don't pay attention to the rest of it. Right. Because I'm sure if you pay attention to everything that we both said, you probably got offended at least 12 times. But if you're just like, I'm just going to take the gold that's good for me and then leave everything else on the side, like you got a dozen amazing things that you can use hopefully. So
crushing. Awesome. 2 more hours all night.
2 hours.
Loving it. Love it. All right. You never walk alone. I do like that. That's true. All good to go. However, loving it, however long, needing to sleep now. All right. Yeah. Some people can't go all night, Russell. Not everybody has Russell Brunson energy. All right. So my next question is, who are you voting for? No, I'm kidding.
Actually, last year, 4 years ago, so I'm a big Jack Bauer fan, and I bought Jack Bauer for President shirts, and that whole day I was like Instagramming and Facebooking. I'm writing in Jack Bauer, and I would have if he was a real human. But anyway,
that's funny. Who was I just? Oh, Leah. I was talking to her on the way. We were driving to the airport. We were talking about Joe Rogan, and because Joe Rogan it's so funny because people like Trump retweeted one of his tweets, and Joe Rogan's a big liberal, right? Like he even said he's going to vote for Bernie before Biden became the nominee, right? And so I feel like a lot of Trump supporters are like, yeah, Joe Rogan's like a Trump fan. Like Joe Rogan is not a Trump fan, right? Like that's not at all what it is. And so we were like, who do you think he's going to vote for? And I was like, if I was like a betting man, I would bet that he votes for Kanye. That he wrote him because he does this 3-hour interview and Kanye answers. If you watch the interview, I mean, I know it's 3 hours of your time and you'll probably never get to it, but it is a fascinating interview. And he asks, because he keeps trying to bring Kanye back to if you were president, what would you do? Because Kanye is I'm going to be president. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of just when, right? If I don't win this year, I'm going to for sure win in 2024. Kanye, I love your confidence. But anyway, Kanye answers these questions completely differently. And so anyway, I don't know where I was going with that. But my real question for you, so you can go long on these, we can go rapid fire questions on them, either way. Atlas Shrugged, got the world on his shoulders. You feel that. How do you deal with that responsibility? Because I'm sure there's been times, I know in my own life with my 3 to 5 little people that I'm managing, some contractors, I'm like, oh my gosh, if I have to take one more thing, I'm just going to explode, right? We don't. So how do you deal with that pressure and not, one of the things that I've had to learn how to do is, I don't know if anger is the right word, but deal with my not taking out my frustration on somebody else, right? God bless Leah, right? She knows me super, super well. And she knows the moods where it's don't ask him a question, avoid it and let him cool off. Because if you say the wrong thing right now, I'm just going to inadvertently take it out on her. Right. Yeah. And I've had to learn how to balance that and communicate that. How do you deal with all that pressure and still you got 400 people looking up to you. And I know you don't talk to them every day, but like that's a lot.
Yeah, that's just employees, and you have the community, and
Right.
yeah, it gets heavy a lot. And I think it's funny because as you read the book, you know, Alice shrugged and walked away from the thing.
Right.
And I think for me, like I don't want to walk away. You know what I mean? I don't think like that's the big thing. And like I think the first part is that I always think about it like that because I'm a big believer that this for me is a calling. It's a mantle. Like this is what I've been called to do this time in my life. And so it's like as heavy as it gets, it's like, man, think about other people in throughout time who had to carry a burden they didn't want to lift, right? There's tons of them. So I think about that a lot. I reach out to other people who are producers who I know have heavy stuff. You can ask Garrett White. Every time I'm like stressing out the max, I text Garrett. I'm like, hey man, life's heavy, just thinking about you. And he always sends back something about like, dude, you realize how you've changed my, like just things like that, it's just like, okay, it's worth it. Like, thank you. And then in Voxer, whenever someone Voxes me something that's like this success story, like, dude, just, you know, blah, blah, blah. And Voxer, you can star things. So I have a whole starred menu of all the people that like have told me how the fact that I'm carrying this has changed their life. So I'll listen to those and I'll listen to 4 or 5 or 6 of them. And eventually when I hear those things, it gets lighter. And so that's a big thing for me is just that. Dave, I'm not sure if Dave's still here or not, but Dave's one of my best friends.
Is he still here? Yeah.
No.
Dave.
One of my favorite humans. Yeah. Now anyway, you know, he's carrying a lot of pressure now too. Dave, I don't know if you knew this, Dave's like the CEO now of ClickFunnels. He's taking over a huge part of my responsibility and he's carrying.
Oh, he's moving in the CEO role?
Yeah.
Or is he, or is moving into it?
He is officially in now. Yeah. Internally. And he's.
Congratulations, Dave.
And man, looking back now, something I should have done 5 years ago. He's so much better than me at it than I am. But like, I see him, I see Todd, I see like people on our team who are carrying weight and like having other people you're doing this with besides yourself helps a lot. So I think that's a big part of it too, is just like, I don't know, if it was just me like that, eventually I think I'd shrug and walk away, but I know that there's a dozen other people all holding that up as well. And like, that helps a lot as well. Cause you know, you're not in alone, you know, like I always tell Dave, I'm like, man, if I was going to war, like I would bring you like, just cause like, I want you in the trenches with me, you know what I mean? And like knowing that I'm not alone helps a lot. So I think a lot of times it's those things when you're doing it by yourself, like that's when it gets hard. Yeah. So I try to not, and I think our default human thing is like isolate and like take the pressure and pain. It's like, and especially for me as an introvert, like I'd rather isolate, but I try specifically when it gets heavy is to like, okay, I can't isolate or I'm going to just get crushed. And I reach out and that helps me a lot to be able to sustain stuff.
Next rapid fire question, if you will. What success takes sacrifice? So like in managing ClickFunnels, obviously like you love it, but like what things are you not able to do or do you wish you were able to do more of that you are not able to because of the role that you play in ClickFunnels?
Yeah. Stuff like this. You know, like I feel bad. There's so many people that ask for podcast interviews and things like that. Like people I would love to do it with, but it's just like there's not enough time. I think I miss when we were first growing ClickFunnels and starting stuff. I remember coming in the mornings and being like, what should we do today? And like thinking about and brainstorming. Like I miss that part. Like now you come in, it's like, all right, there's 8,000 things you got to do. It's like, okay, you know, and like, I miss those parts of it. I miss just like, I don't know, I miss not being able to turn it off, but I think, I don't know, it would be nice. I guess Alex Sharpton thing about like, you don't want to turn off, you don't know why I would. There's times where, and this is dorky, this is like the cheesiest thing. I remember watching the last Endgame, Avengers Endgame.
Oh yeah.
And the end when Iron Man dies and what's her name? Pepper Potts, right?
Yeah.
When she's like, you can rest now. I remember hearing that and I was just like, God, like I started crying. I was just like, I feel like I want to rest sometimes. I don't know how or when or like, but like I desire that, like, but I don't know how, because it's like there's so much stuff and so many things, and I think I don't know. I long for that moment where it's just like whatever the again the end of the Bootstrap book. I don't know where or when that happens, but like, I'm excited for the time where it's just like, oh, we did it. Like it's weird because in wrestling there was a thing where you get your hand raised and then you get to like the rest. In business, I haven't found that. Like it's just this constant thing where you have victories and stuff, but you never. You know, again, wrestling is like you cut weight all week, you train, you practice, and you go out there head to head, you wrestle, you get your hand raised, you go out to eat and you relax, you sleep that weekend, and Monday you get back to work. Like, I don't feel like in business there's ever been that like,
Do you think it exists?
I don't know. I think I assume when people sell a business or some of that, but most people I know who've sold a business, it's hard because it's like someone else is taking your thing that like your identity's tied to it. So that scares me too. And so I don't know. And that's why I'm like, I don't know. It's like, is it when I die that I'm like, oh, like, you know, like Iron Man? I don't know. But like, I don't know. Someday, like, I desire that. I don't know how to get it, but that's something I'm looking at. Like, how do you get that? How do you get that release again? Where you're just like, oh, I did a good job, you know? I think Funnel Hacking Live is probably the closest to that.
Yeah, that's what I was
where
thinking.
after it ends. But then also sometimes like 2 years ago, it ended semi-controversial and I got blown up for like 3 or 4 days. And I remember just like, I was like, this sucks. Like, I just killed myself. And now I've been like defending myself for 3 days because of some other speaker who said something that I wish they wouldn't have, but they did. And, you know, and yeah, some of the things like that are hard, but anyway.
Are we having Funnel Hacking Live this year? Or next year?
Some version of it. Yeah. We're in a contract battle with Nashville where we've done the last 2 years. We're supposed to go there again this year. It typically takes us 9 months to fill Funnel Hacking Live.
Yeah.
Obviously, because of everything, we haven't. We're like 3 months out from when it was supposed to be, and there's no way I can fill it in time. Plus, I don't think people are going to come to there, and so we're trying to like push that contract for another year, and then doing a hybrid something in between. But so far we haven't nailed down the contract, which is anyway. So something will happen, and I'm dying to not announce it yet because I don't have finality yet. But some version.
What you mean you can't break something right here live?
I'm trying my best.
1 o'clock in the morning Eastern time.
We'd love to do some kind of hybrid something. It's interesting because I spoke at Tony's thing where he had the big intern.
Yeah, how was that?
It was really cool and hard because at first you come out and you're like in this room and there's faces everywhere, like, oh, that's amazing. But you're speaking at an event, you shift from like you're looking at different people, which is fun. Here, if you look at people, it looks like you're talking like this. So you have to look at the camera. So you have a million faces everywhere and you have to look right here.
Oh my God.
And like everyone's doing weird things. And like, so it's kind of hard because you're like, I have to look here or else it looks like I'm not connected to you. But like there's so much happening that I want to like. So
that's crazy.
It was almost not, I don't know if dizzy is the right word, but something like that we were just like, anyway, it was different. It was hard to get used to.
Yeah.
Anyway, he's building a new place that's 3 times as big. We're just gonna have a hybrid, but it's like half is that, half's a stadium. He says something interesting. He's like, this year's the year of virtual, next year's the year of hybrid. So I'm trying to figure out our version of that. And I don't know what that is yet.
Hybrid being part live, part.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause I never wanted to make Funnel Hacking Live virtual ever. Cause like, you know, it's the thing, but I also don't want to make it. Yeah. Anyway, so I'm hoping the next couple weeks to have some finality on that contract so we can start the next, whatever the process looks like. So there'll be some version of 2021 for sure.
Cool.
Where people who want to travel will be able to travel.
All right. Awesome. 2 more questions.
Okay.
1, what is one thing that people don't know about you? Like what's a Russell Brunson thing that like is a pretty like part of who you are that like the people don't really know?
It's public about everything.
Are you?
I don't know. That's a good question. Have you learned anything about me since you've been here?
Yeah, a couple of things.
Really?
Yeah, a couple of things.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, more from your wife though.
Yeah, she's telling all the good stuff.
Also, your kids are fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah, I talked to them for probably 10, 15 minutes.
My kids are the coolest. I think my biggest fear in life is that I am not going to I'm not going to be the dad that they need. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It keeps me like, I don't know. Being a parent's way harder than I thought it was going to be. I thought I was going to be amazing at it. I'm like, I can influence thousands of people at once, but like the person you care about and love the most. And same to my wife. Like, I think those are my biggest fears. Like, I don't want to mess up the family. And it's weird because it's like, again, I feel like all my superpowers are like my kryptonite in a family. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I think I struggle with that a lot of times where it's just like, man, I'm such a good communicator. I think communicating messages, and I struggle communicating with the people I love the most. And so I think that's the thing. I'm scared to death of cats and dogs. I will not touch them.
Really?
Yeah, I won't touch any animal. They're disgusting to me. Like, And I'm allergic to cats, but the way it came about is when I was in high school, the girl I was dating, she had a cat and they went out of town. She's like, you can watch my cat. And I was like, okay. So I came in, the cat's like rubbing against me. So I was like petting it. Cause I'm like, I never had an animal before. Right. So I'm petting it and my eyes swole shut for 3 days. 3 days later, it finally opened again. And the white part was all blood red. And I haven't touched an animal since then. I like, you can watch, like my in-laws have cats. I walk in the house and I stand there. I won't sit on the couches. Cause I'm like, because I'll break out in allergies. If like a dog runs up to me, like everyone, like you'll see how it's kind of turn my, like, don't touch me. Like, anyway, I don't like animals unless you can eat them. So there's something people probably don't know. There you
go. Who would have guessed? Who would have guessed? All right. Last question. Okay. Final question. And I asked this to, I think I've asked this to you before, but now we're here. We're in person and we're going to talk. I want you to fast forward to the end of your life when you are on your deathbed. And I want you to like all your money and success and fame and influence, like it's all gone. But like you've influenced a lot of people. And like you get to leave them with a final message that like kind of defines like not what you took away from life, but like the message that you feel like you should like put on to some, like pass on to for generations to come. Like what would you want to be defined by? Like what would you want that message to be and for people to remember you by?
That's cool. And I'm hoping, this is like my biggest hope. I'm hoping that like when we die, we go to our maker. I'm hoping that we get a glimpse of like what our life actually did, you know, like the ripple effect. Like, you know, It's a Wonderful Life. Yeah. He sees what's life before and after. I'm hoping all of us get that experience because you have no idea what you're actually doing with it. But like, I'm sure what we're all doing is, anyway, I'm praying that we get that moment because that would be, anyway, I think my message.
That'd be so cool.
Yeah. Can you imagine that? Like,
that'd be wild.
Yeah.
We need to do a podcast just about like our faith.
Yeah.
That'd be cool. That'll be our next one.
Yeah.
Next one I'll fly out here for and we'll just do just about God and faith. All right.
That'd be fun. But I think for my message, like I would leave out is I think that, again, this will tie back to what we talked about initially. You know, I think a lot of us start these businesses or start whatever we're trying to do, whatever we're called to do. It's like we start initially out of greed, right? The natural man, like we have these desires that make us want to do stuff, right? And I think for me, when I first got started in this business, I just thought it was to make money and all these kind of things. And I saw like, even though I started having impact, I'm like, this is cool. But it wasn't until I had a coach a few years ago. She's amazing. And I remember she asked me about like what I think God thinks about my business. I'm like, why would he care about this? Like, he cares about how I'm living my life and I'm keeping the commandments and stuff. But why would he care about this? And she's like, don't you see it? I'm like, see what? She's like, you not see like what he's like who you've become, like what, like his hand in your life.
Yeah.
And it never crossed my mind. And like, she started like helping me understand, like this thing that you're doing is not just like to make money. This is a calling. This is like literal, like you were called of God to do this thing, and the ripple effect in people's lives you're changing. Even though you're helping people start business or build funnels, it seems like it doesn't matter, but it does because it frees people. And then they can change people's lives, and like the ripple effect is huge. And she helped me to understand that day in such a profound way that just like these things that we're doing, like it's a literal calling from God. And I think if I was on my deathbed, I would want people to know, like when you feel that tug or that nudge, that thing that starts you on this journey, that's not just like, oh, it'll be fun, oh, I'll make some money or whatever. It's like, it's literally God, like giving you something like this is your stewardship, like do something with it, like see what it is. And I think if you realize that, like since I've realized that, like it's been different. Like now that I know that, it's like, okay, I'm going to run as hard as I can because this is not just an idea I had. This is a gift. And it's like, he's testing, what am I going to do with this? And then when you look at it from that lens, it's like, man, you can do and create. You have more faith in yourself because it's not yourself, right? Like I get scared every time I get on stage. I got nervous before this. Like people like, you're probably confident because you're on stage in front of 35,000 people. No, I freak out in front of like 20 people. Like I get so nervous, but I'm like, I know that I can do it because this is a calling that I was given, and he's not going to give me something that I can't do. And so I think that if I could help people understand, I don't know what the right way to articulate it, but I think if everyone understood that, like how real that actually is, it'd make you run harder, make you work harder, it'd make you braver, it'd make you have more courage, more like all the things you need to get that message out because you were called. Like it is a literal calling, and you're probably not worthy of it yet. Like when you get it, you're not worthy. Like they say he qualifies who he calls, right? Like you're not qualified right now, but like the act of you moving forward is what qualifies you, right? That's what prepares you for the calling. And I think that if people understood that, man, people would focus so much less on themselves and on their situation and just like, all right, here's the baton, run, right? Yeah. Start running, and you would do it with perfect faith because you know it's from from somebody beside yourself.
Hmm.
And I think people understood that and believed it would change everything.
Russell, thank you so much, man. This was
man.
so much fun. I'm so glad we were able to
fun.
make this happen.
How long do we have to do? Like, where are we at?
We're at 3 hours and 18 minutes.
Dang, anyone still here?
3 hours and 20 minutes.
A lot of people stay here.
Yeah, we got quite a bit.
Thanks for having me, man. Thanks for coming all the way out here for this.
Yeah,
Cool.
of course. Yeah, well,
I want to read all the comments now.
I wonder how many there are.
So cool. Yeah. Did you guys all get your t-shirts, by the way? This
Yeah.
is your last chance to get one of these shirts.
Yeah,
T-shirtsmackdown.com.
What do you guys think of the interview? Yes, good, bad, thumbs up, rate it on a scale from 1 to 10. On a scale from 1 to 10, give us a rating. 1
I
to
used to
10.
think Russell's cool, but now I think he's crazy. Or I used to think Russell's crazy, now I think he's cool. Like, I'm good with all those things. I'm just curious.
Russell, God bless you. God bless your wisdom and mission. Look at this. Thank you so much. This is amazing.
Smileys are here. What's up, Smiley?
Let's go. What's up, James Smiley? Great stuff. Awesome. I love it. I could do a 1,000. We got a 1,000 out of a 10. That's pretty darn good.
That is really good.
12 out of 10.
Oh, so fun.
Brent, what's up, man? All right, we're gonna have to do this again. Sometime we can sit down and talk about God. That one we're really gonna have to get prepped for. Oh, do you know Nick Robbins?
Not top of my head.
All right. He's like kind of in the ClickFunnels world. Like he ran an agency, sold it, but like still remained a partner, and then like got bored and then like came back into it.
Okay.
Anyway, so he and I had like a 3.5 hour conversation about God. So like it's interesting because he and I actually have a lot of similar beliefs, but he doesn't believe in God. Like, so he's like, yeah, I think there's something up there and it's like something intelligent or whatever. And so like we had like he uses language and like I don't typically, like, so like we had all this big, long, huge debate. So it'd be fun to sit down.
That's
again.
fun.
So
I think one of the most fascinating conversations I ever had was with Howard Berg, world's fastest reader.
yeah,
That guy's like
that's right. He
30,000
came here, didn't he?
Yeah, a couple times we've hung out. He's read 30,000 books. And I was like, I can ask this guy any question I want. And so I asked him, I was like, what's your opinion on God? And I remember he told me because like, again, religion usually causes fights because like, well, I believe, and it's so cool because he's like, well, most people read one book and then that they base their belief on God on this one book. He's like, I've read, I can't remember what it was, like 1,200 books on God from every perspective. And he's like, based on that, this is what I believe. It was just like so cool to see that. I think all of us, instead of us just like, this is my way, it's like, let's just hear, even if you I completely disagree with so many people's opinion, but I still hear because again, like why do they believe that? There's a reason why they believe that. Like, I want to understand that. And anyway, and it's
that's
really
my big thing. But my big thing is like, and that's one of the hardest things for me is figuring out, like my belief is always changing. That's part of the reason I started the podcast. I just want to like talk to people, right? I'm like, if I'm wrong, like I'm so excited whenever someone comes and is like, you're wrong and here's why. And I'm like,
sweet.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. I know what I'm on to next. Yes, right?
Yeah.
Where everybody else like, I don't want to be wrong. I'm like, if somebody comes in and like proves my idea wrong, like my ideas are pretty thought through. Like, I'm a really thought through person. Like I know why I believe what I believe, not just what I believe, right? So somebody can come along like challenge that. And that's like one of the things that like was so attractive to me about Leah. It's like Leah was smart. Like she challenged, like even beliefs that like she even agreed with, like she'd play the devil's advocate and like change it, like challenge it. I'm like, that's what I like. I want to grow and expand like that. So anyway, we'll have to come back and do that. So, all right, Russell, thank you so much, man. Super appreciate it. Guys, as always, hustle. God bless. Don't be afraid to think different. And who knows, you might just end up in a chair next to Russell Brunson. So it'd be awesome. Guys, as always, hustle. God bless. Don't be afraid to think different. Those of us that think different are going to change the world by using funnels and other stuff. I love you all. And I will see you on next live stream episode. Take it easy, fam. Peace.